Chapter 531. When they returned from outside, it was already late at night in the university town. Even the most lively Xiong Xiaofeng had fallen asleep on Poplar Fruit's arm. In the Apple store, not only did Poplar Fruit buy a MacBook, but he also bought the iPad 3 that he had always wanted to buy, but hadn't been released in China. Although the new iPad 3 was very big, it was much thinner than the previous generations of iPads, and the Retina screen looked clearer and more comfortable. Compared to a laptop, the iPad obviously attracted the children's attention more. In the Apple store, Poplar Fruit downloaded a few games like Fruit Ninja. On the subway, Xiong Xiaofeng was reluctant to let go of the iPad. But after all, he was still young, and he used to sleep early in the mountains. Xiong Xiaofeng's obsession with iPad games couldn't resist the waves of drowsiness that came like waves. When he saw Xiong Xiaofeng holding the iPad and starting to doze off, Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He put the iPad away and coaxed him to sleep. So when they got off the subway, Poplar Fruit had to carry Kiki in his left hand and Xiong Xiaofeng in his right. The two sleeping children were like koalas hugging Poplar Fruit's arm and hanging on to Poplar Fruit's body. Poplar Fruit's physical fitness was good. Carrying two children that definitely weighed more than 50 kilograms, Xiong Xiaofeng was heavier. He was still able to talk to Xiong Xiaolin without panting or blushing. Xiong Xiaolin was also very sleepy, but she still forced herself to help Uncle Poplar Fruit carry things. Carrying two children, Poplar Fruit didn't have free hands. Fortunately, he bought a computer bag that could store the computer and tablet. Xiong Xiaolin just carried it like this. On the empty school road, Xiong Xiaolin hugged her laptop to her chest. Her timid eyes kept looking left and right, as if a bad guy would jump out from the bushes on the side of the road and snatch the laptop away from her. Poplar Fruit took a few steps forward and heard Xiong Xiaolin's heavy footsteps. He turned his head and saw that the little girl's face was deathly pale. In order to keep up with Poplar Fruit, she was already jogging. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to slow down a little. He comforted her with a smile. "Xiaolin, what are you afraid of? Walk slowly, don't hug me so tightly." Xiong Xiaolin, on the other hand, acted as if she didn't hear him. She continued to walk while looking left and right. There were a few times when she almost bumped into Poplar Fruit's leg. Poplar Fruit said helplessly, "Don't be nervous. Isn't Uncle here?" When they finally returned to the guest house, Xiong Xiaolin breathed a sigh of relief. When Poplar Fruit sent Xiong Xiaofeng back to the bed in their room, he found that Xiong Jiwu just came back to take a bath and then went to the hospital to accompany the bed. He really didn't worry about the two children.
Poplar Fruit let Xiong Xiaolin take a bath and sleep in peace. He then took Kiki back to his room. After being busy for a while, Poplar Fruit moved a chair to sit on the narrow balcony. Thinking back to his experience tonight, it was the first time he had taken so many children to the downtown area to play. Although there was no problem physically, he was still a little tired mentally. He had to think about where to play while taking care of the three children, especially when there were so many people. In this strange city, it would be a big trouble if they got lost. After a whole night, Poplar Fruit felt a little tired. At this time, it was almost 11 o'clock. Poplar Fruit was playing with the mobile phone in his hand, hesitating. He wanted to call Fong Bei Bei, but according to his understanding of Fong Bei Bei was about to go to bed at this time, or she might have already fallen asleep. Just as Poplar Fruit was hesitating, his mobile phone suddenly rang. Glancing at the lit screen, Poplar Fruit was stunned. It was Zheng Yujie calling. Zhang Yujie rarely called Poplar Fruit in the middle of the night, because if she didn't work overtime, she would go to bed early. It was said that going to bed early was helpful for cell regeneration. If a girl often stayed up late, it would be easy for her to grow old. But today was special. Zhang Yujie encountered something particularly depressing. Previously, Zhang Yujie was very busy, mainly because of two things. The first was Poplar Fruit's new, translated book, Young P.I.'s Fantasy Drifting. As the main book of the publishing house this year, the preparation of the early publicity and sales were too important. This book was different from the biography of sect leader Chao last year. Last year, there wasn't enough time to promote it because there wasn't enough time. Since there was a few months of buffer time this year, Zhang Yujie naturally wouldn't let it go. For this book, she led the team to various major cities, online and offline sales and distribution. She was prepared to invest a lot, and at the same time, with the help of director Li An's new film, she wanted to fight a beautiful publicity battle. Zhang Yujie was very ambitious. If it wasn't for the copyright issues, she wanted to convert it into traditional Chinese characters and sell it to Hong Kong or even Taiwan. The second thing was about Wanhe Tianyi. Last month, the Unexpectedly micro-movie released, set a record of 10 million views in the first week. After that, the growth of the views didn't slow down at all. Unexpectedly became the #1 trending topic on Chengdu. Classic lines in the micro-movie, such as, "I have no regrets in my life. Thinking of that afternoon when I ran under the sunset, that was my lost youth," became popular online slogans on Weibo and other social networks. It was said that many of the micro-movie awards had listed this movie as the focus of their attention. Bai Ku, Che and Juan, and the others who starred at the same time also received the attention and discussion of netizens. With the attention, some online variety shows were ready to take action. They sent letters to the company, wanting to invite them as guests. Of course, Wanhe Tianyi didn't have the energy to participate in these small shows at this time. Taking advantage of the enthusiasm of the audience, Wanhe Tianyi was intensely preparing to release the Unexpectedly miniseries. It should be said that the Unexpectedly micromovie was only the first shot to increase Wanhe's popularity, but the miniseries was the real highlight for Wanhe Tianyi. This was because the miniseries was more in line with Wanhe's position as a new media film company. It was also the key to whether Wanhe could achieve profits. This project was very important, so all the shareholders, including Poplar Fruit, received the notice of the meeting. However, Poplar Fruit wasn't interested in the company's operations at all. He would rather spend his time in the mountains and rivers than fly to Beijing for a meeting. Even though Zhang Yujie complained to Poplar Fruit a few times in private, in the end, Zhang Yujie had no choice but to give him carte blanche. Zhang Yujie wasn't as unconcerned about Poplar Fruit and her career as Poplar Fruit. She went to almost every meeting and put a lot of energy into preparing for the new movie. Unlike the previous micro-movies, Wanhe didn't need to cry for sponsors this time. Large amounts of sponsorship came to him. After tasting the benefits, Cinda Translation wanted to increase their advertising investment, but in the end, they couldn't win over the two new big clients, EasyNet Games and Zhongxiang Milk Tea. Because of this, Poplar Fruit even called Yao Dehua to comfort him. Of course, Cinda Translation wasn't affected too much. After all, traditional media advertising was more suitable for their target. These two new clients were really rich. They planned to invest 200,000 and 400,000 for one episode of the miniseries. They also promised to invest more in the next episode depending on the results. This time, Wanhe really took off from the airport's runway to success. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to. Chapter 532. If it was just work, it wouldn't make Zhang Yujie feel so burdened. In the past few days, when Zhang Yujie had just finished her work and was about to take a break, her mother, Deng Baoyan, gave her trouble again. This time, the content was very dramatic. Yes, it was a blind date again. Is he really not a son of an aristocratic family? Zhang Yujie asked suspiciously. No, I promise. Deng Baoyan said with a smile, just go and meet him. If he's not suitable, I'll find another one for you. You're either in the publishing house or in the dormitory all day long. You haven't seen many men, and people are beginning to suspect your sexual orientation. Mom. Zhang Yujie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How can you talk about your daughter like that? In the end, Zhang Yujie couldn't persuade her mother. Deng Baoyan knew that Zhang Yujie was amenable to coaxing but not coercion, so she agreed to go. It was just a blind date. It wouldn't cost her anything. However, Zhang Yujie wasn't a person who would give in easily. On the day of the blind date, She deliberately worked overtime at the publishing house and arrived at the French restaurant an hour late. Mr. Gua, I'm sorry. I was too busy with work and came late. Please don't mind. Zhang Yujie, who was still dressed as a professional manager, smiled and didn't look embarrassed at all. Unexpectedly, Mr. Gua smiled and said, "It's okay, it's normal to be busy with work. Auntie told me that you're the chief editor of the publishing house, so you have to take care of everything. Thank you for your hard work." Dressed in a suit, he pulled out a chair for Zhang Yujie in a gentlemanly manner. Mr. Guo looked older than Zhang Yujie. He was in his early 30s and had a lot of hair. But there was a kind of magnanimity in his gestures. This kind of magnanimity wasn't like Poplar Fruit's magnanimity that came naturally from the accumulation of knowledge, but it was the arrogance of a superior person. But thinking about it, if he wasn't a son of an aristocratic family, Deng Baoyan would only pay attention to those young men who were in high positions at a young age. I heard that Mr. Gua is the director of the General Administration of Sports. Which department are you from? Zhang Yujie glanced at him after she sat down. Let's not talk about this for now. Mr. Gua smiled. He raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Let's order first. You must be hungry, right? Zhang Yujie was slightly taken aback. She didn't expect that during a blind date, there would actually be someone who didn't want to reveal his advantages and instead change the topic to order food. This kind of person either didn't really care and simply wanted to chat and go through the motions, or was pretending. Interesting. Zhang Yujie raised her phoenix eyes and changed into a more comfortable position. She was prepared to watch the performance. Indeed, Mr. Gua was pretending. You're still acting when you're ordering. When the waiter saw that he was Chinese, he kindly spoke in Chinese, but Mr. Gua actually spoke French. What's today's specialty? Mr. Gua asked. The waiter was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "Tayun grabiche, veal with mayonnaise, monsieur, sir." The waiter kindly pointed to the Chinese and French menu for Mr. Gua to see. Okay, I want one. Mr. Gua made a grammatical mistake here. Mr. Gua nodded and said. He then turned to ask Zhang Yujie, "Yujie, do you want one too?" Zhang Yujie was disgusted by him calling her so intimately. She frowned and asked, "What do you want?" Obviously, Mr. Gua didn't know the name of the specialty dish that the waiter had just mentioned. He looked down at the menu and read out the Chinese name of the dish that the waiter had pointed out. "No, I want a serving of onion soup as the starter, a half-cooked steak with blood, and a green vegetable platter salad." Zhang Yujie looked at the menu and ordered quickly. "What kind of dessert and drink would you like?" the waiter asked in Chinese. "I don't need dessert, just a glass of water." Zhang Yujie waved her hand and smiled. "I've ordered. You can ask him what else he wants." "Monsieur. _boyson. Duvin. Sir. What kind of drink would you like? Some wine?" the waiter asked again in French. Mr. Guo's eyes flashed with a hint of confusion. He didn't quite understand, so he had to follow the routine that he had set up earlier and asked stiffly in French, "I want to order wine now." "What kind of wine do you have?" This sentence was a little long, and Mr. Gua was nervous and made a lot of mistakes. "Notre undersakar and repose." The waiter thought it was funny, but he didn't dare to show it. He could only introduce Kir, gin, room. Kir, gin, rum. "I want a bottle of Lafite." Mr. Gua listened for a while and realized that he didn't know what the waiter was talking about. He simply pointed at the wine that he was most familiar with on the menu and said. Of course, he was referring to Lafite, which was only a medium-sized wine that cost about 800 yuan a bottle. Zhang Yujie was watching from the side and found it funny. Although she didn't understand French, she could tell from Mr. Gua's expression and his clumsy speech that the man in front of her was pretending, and he wasn't pretending at all. Sometimes, if you didn't have a certain level of ability, you could really embarrass yourself by pretending. He doesn't know French, but he's still pretending to be a cultured person. Zhang Yujie curled her lips and despised him in her heart. She suddenly thought of Poplar Fruit's shadow. If this guy was here, he definitely wouldn't bother to order in French, right? Zhang Yujie's lips curled up slightly, and her heart was blooming with joy. She knew Poplar Fruit's personality. Although Poplar Fruit often mentioned that he knew 13 languages in the micro-movie unexpectedly, that was only because the plot required it. Poplar Fruit was very low-key in his daily life. Poplar Fruit could order in French very fluently, and his French was even better than many French people with accents. However, he didn't like to pretend. They were clearly in his own country, and the waiter was obviously Chinese. Was there a need to say a few words in French to show that he was different? From the looks of it, the difference in ability and self-restraint between the two of them was obvious. Thinking of Yang Guo, this big bad guy, Zhang Yujie unconsciously rested her chin on her hand and fell into deep thought. The lights in the restaurant were a little dim. Under the flickering candlelight and the accompaniment of the melodious piano, Zhang Yujie's eyes were a little blurred. However, her empty eyes were looking in the wrong direction. After ordering with difficulty, Mr. Guo turned his head, thinking that Zhang Yujie was looking at him. He was delighted, and a proud smile appeared on his face. Although Zhang Yujie's clothes were a little gender-neutral, in terms of appearance, she could definitely be called a national beauty. To be able to make a great beauty worship, and obsess to look at him, Mr. Guo felt that his strategy was too successful. Of course, his method had been successful in the past. However, Mr. Guo didn't know that Zhang Yujie had already seen through his true colors. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 533. After ordering, Zhang Yujie retracted her hands from her cheeks and resumed her ladylike posture. Although she was smiling, her eyes were getting colder and colder. However, because of the reflection of the candlelight, Mr. Guo didn't notice it. "I don't drink." Zhang Yujie stopped the waiter who had brought Lafitte over and said with a smile, "Just plain water is fine." Zhang Yujie didn't drink. She just didn't like to drink in front of strangers. Even if it was red wine, it would be boring. However, Mr. Guo didn't seem to notice the determination in Zhang Yujie's tone. He smiled and tried to persuade her. Drinking red wine in moderation is good for the body. Especially for young girls like you, when you're tired from work, a glass of red wine can help nourish your face and slow down the aging of your cells. Lafitte is the most famous red wine brand in France. It's also a high-end red wine. It's hard to buy authentic red wine outside. "Waiter, can you give her a glass?" Mr. Guo's voice was very gentle and magnetic. However, in Zhang Yujie's ears, it was a different matter. Zhang Yujie frowned. She suddenly smiled charmingly and said, "Yeah, Lafitte is a high-end wine. I couldn't afford to drink it before. However, Mr. Guo, I haven't been feeling well recently and I'm allergic to alcohol. So, I'll pass today." The first part was sarcasm, and the second part was blatant lying. Zhang Yujie was a little unhappy with Mr. Guo's persuasion. Not to mention that he used Lafitte to flaunt his status. Although Mr. Guo said that he wanted to persuade and ask, his tone was a little tough, as if he couldn't refuse. Zhang Yujie was disgusted by this kind of self-righteous man. She snorted in disdain. "Who are you? How dare you meddle in my business?" Maybe Zhang Yujie pretended too well, but Mr. Guo didn't hear the disgust in Zhang Yujie's voice. He smiled and didn't force it. After the waiter left, he smiled and said, "Yujie, you still call me Mr. Guo? It's too distant. I'm a few years older than you. How about you call me Brother Guo?" "Brother Guo? National anthem?" Zhang Yujie grumbled in her heart. She smiled and said, "Just call me Mr. Guo. I've only known you for less than 10 minutes. By the way, Mr. Guo, if it's possible, please don't call me by my name. It sounds like we're very familiar with each other. It's too awkward." If it had been the Zhang Yujie of the past, she wouldn't have been nice to him after sitting down. Now, because of her relationship with Poplar Fruit, she had become a lot more amiable, but it didn't mean that her fiery temper had changed. Although she was still smiling, as if the two of them were joking, her tone was not polite at all. Mr. Guo's face froze. His smile gradually disappeared, and there was even a flash of anger on his face. However, he took a deep breath and recovered. As if nothing had happened, Mr. Guo smiled gently and said, "All right then, I'll call you Miss Zheng too." Perhaps in his opinion, this was the embodiment of a man's self-restraint, but Zhang Yujie didn't care. Mr. Guo raised his wine glass and took a sip, then smiled and said, "Before I came, I saw the photo and thought that Miss Zhang was a great beauty. Now that I see you in person, I realize that you're even prettier than the photos. You're even more beautiful than the big stars on TV. Hee hee, how can I compare to those big stars?" Zhang Yujie smiled. She felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. How did her photo end up in the hands of a stranger? Wasn't his mother a little too unreliable? What if he took her photo to do something dirty? The French restaurant served the dishes very quickly, and it didn't take long for the food to be served. Zhang Yujie originally felt bored chatting with him, so she could use the food to cover up her impatience. Thus, Zhang Yujie was only left with "oh," "n," "hee hee," and other tone responses. After listening to Mr. Guo for a long time, Zhang Yujie finally understood. This Mr. Guo was the son of a government official. His father was the deputy mayor of a provincial city outside. After he graduated from Beijing, he stayed in Beijing to work in a ministry and was now an official. Of course, this official position was probably due to his father's connections. He was only a small deputy director of the General Administration of Sports, and a divisional leader was still a noob outside. If thrown into the vast ocean of Beijing, he wouldn't even make a splash. Zhang Yujie didn't think that there was anything wrong with him relying on connections to become an official. After all, she had been influenced by these things since she was young, so she didn't dislike it. However, did this Mr. Guo take the wrong medicine? Why did he keep showing off his family background in front of her? Finally understanding, Zhang Yujie didn't know whether to laugh or cry in her heart. It turned out that this Mr. Guo was the same as Zhang Yujie. He didn't even investigate the other party's background before he came for the blind date. In fact, it was like this. Zhang Yujie's mother, Deng Baoyan, had a new colleague in the unit 2 years ago. This colleague was very nice and was the same age as Deng Baoyan. The two women became good friends in a short period of time. Not only did they have lunch together at noon, but they also liked to talk about dressing up. Unfortunately, in less than 2 months, this new colleague was transferred to the investigation team to do basic research with the officials. The time was too short. It was so short that she and Deng Baoyan had just become best friends when they separated. It was so short that she didn't even know Deng Baoyan's family background clearly. 2 years later, this colleague finished her work in the investigation team and was transferred back again. Deng Baoyan and her played together again. Although they hadn't seen each other in the past few years, they would occasionally contact each other on the phone, so their relationship was still there. Hearing Deng Baoyan say that she had a headache about her daughter, this colleague had a flash of inspiration and wanted to introduce this Mr. Guo to Zhang Yujie. This enthusiastic matchmaker had good intentions. She had met Mr. Guo's father when she was doing research, and she also knew that Mr. Guo was still single in his 30s. She had met Zhang Yujie 2 years ago, and she was a very beautiful girl. She thought that the two of them would be quite compatible. She heard that the other party was the son of a deputy mayor. Although the deputy mayor wasn't really considered to be from an aristocratic family in Deng Baoyan's eyes, and he was also a little old, Deng Baoyan thought that Zhang Yujie was still in a quagmire and was so resistant to those young masters in Beijing. Why not let the two of them meet? With a buffer, she could introduce better people to her in the future. Poor Mr. Guo. Until now, he still didn't know that he had become Deng Baoyan's pawn and was still foolishly thinking that he had the upper hand. Mr. Guo happily mentioned his family background again and again, pretending not to care, but he didn't notice that Zhang Yujie was already very impatient. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 534. Mr. Guo enjoyed this feeling very much. He was talking non-stop, and the beautiful woman in front of him, who looked even more charming under the candlelight, was listening obediently. This gave him a great sense of vanity. So what if she was beautiful? Wasn't she still shocked by him? It was very similar to the feeling he had when he was all-powerful in the general administration of sports. Although his official position was not high, he was still a deputy director in charge of sports project management. Those sports stars looked bright and beautiful in front of the camera, but when he went to inspect them, they still had to be obedient. Zhang Yujie was already very impatient. She frequently picked up the cup to drink water, not because she was really thirsty, but because she was a little irritated and wanted to suppress the urge to beat someone up. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have come. Originally, she just wanted to deal with it, but she didn't expect to meet a chatterbox. As a man, what was the point of talking non-stop? This guy seemed to treat her as his subordinate, and the way he spoke was as annoying as those annoying leaders. As for the content of his words, well, Zhang Yujie didn't listen at all, because it was equally empty and boring. Buzz, buzz. The phone on the table suddenly vibrated. Zhang Yujie's spirit was lifted, as if a drowning person had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She picked up the phone and glanced at it. "What's wrong?" Mr. Guo moved his head forward and asked in a friendly manner. Zhang Yujie smiled charmingly, stood up and said, "My assistant is calling, I'll go pick it up." This glance shocked Mr. Guo, and when he came back to his senses, Zhang Yujie had already taken the phone to a place near the window to pick it up. He didn't know whether it was intentional or not, but Zhang Yujie walked behind the potted plant, and her graceful body hid behind the branches and vines, blocking Mr. Guo's fiery gaze. In fact, the assistant's call was just a regular call according to her previous arrangement. Zhang Yujie used to despise this kind of cliché plot, but now she couldn't care less. After a while, Zhang Yujie came back, looking anxious. She picked up the bag on the chair, smiled apologetically, and said, "I'm sorry, there's an emergency at the publishing house, I need to go back to deal with it." Mr. Guo's expression was a little strange. He was used to being a leader. He was the only one who left halfway. When had he ever been left behind? He wanted to get angry, but he didn't want to lose his composure in front of a beauty. Just as Zhang Yujie stood up, someone grabbed her arm. Zhang Yujie frowned and looked up. Mr. Guo was standing beside Zhang Yujie. His expression changed, but Zhang Yujie still noticed it. She should have been angry, but Zhang Yujie pretended to be slightly surprised. The imperceptible atmosphere around them began to change subtly, but Zhang Yujie's expression became normal. If her younger brother, Zhang Taimin, was by her side, he would definitely run away in fear. Because this was a sign that Zhang Yujie was about to flip out. Is work that important? What's the point of doing this job if you don't even have time to eat? Mr. Guo said softly. He let go of Zhang Yujie's arm, but put his hands together and pressed on Zhang Yujie's shoulder intimately. Zhang Yujie frowned slightly. She sat down again and quietly twisted her body to move away from Mr. Guo's hands. Zhang Yujie's dislike for Mr. Guo skyrocketed when he touched her the first time they met. Mr. Guo smiled with satisfaction. He returned to his seat and sat down. Then he began to chatter, "Let me make it clear that I'm not targeting you. I'm just expressing my opinion. For a woman, health and family are more important. Don't put too much emphasis on your career. Otherwise, what's the point of having a man?" Mr. Guo even laughed, thinking that it was very humorous. Zhang Yujie chuckled. Her eyes were cold as she asked, "So, Mr. Guo thinks that women don't need their own careers?" Of course, that's not the case. In today's society, women's status is getting higher and higher. Our country advocates equality between men and women. Mr. Guo laughed. It's just that in a family, if there's a man who can earn money, he can hold up the sky. Then, women don't have to work so hard for that little bit of money, don't you think so? Is money the only goal in life? Zhang Yujie's eyebrows were about to rise. Her voice became steadier as she asked. "Of course not, of course not." Mr. Guo laughed. "You've completely misunderstood me. Of course, money is not the only goal in life. It's just that in a family, you have to be clear about your priorities. If the man's career is more important, then the woman should sacrifice a little." Mr. Gua continued, for example, if you have the chance to marry into our Gua family in the future. It's just an example. There's a chance? Hearing him say such high-sounding words, Zhang Yujie wanted to vomit. If you marry into a big family like our Gua family, you definitely won't lack money or anything. And your man is fighting for his career. Then, as a woman, you have to think for your man, just like my mother and my aunt. Mr. Gua said seriously. They've all given up their careers to be housewives to take care of their families. Is it good to be a man's vassal? Zhang Yujie asked. How is it not good? Mr. Gua said unhappily. They're living a happy life. If they want to travel, they can do it. If they want to go to the spa or beauty salon, they can go to those banquets. They're dignified in front of others and comfortable behind others. They only care about spending money. Isn't that what you want? If it's you, and the woman earns enough money outside, you stay at home and only care about spending money. Would you be happy? Wang Yujie sneered and asked. Why are you so insensible? Mr. Gua was getting more and more dissatisfied. He put on the attitude of a leader and scolded, women should stay at home to be filial to their parents and take care of their children. All you want is to show your face in public. Which big family would want such a disobedient daughter-in-law? Let me tell you, your attitude is not right. Mr. Gua raised a finger and pointed at Zhang Yujie. With a serious expression, he said, if you want to marry into our family, you have to change your personality. Make a big change. Before he could finish, Zhang Yujie couldn't take it anymore. With a bang, she slammed the table and stood up. She picked up the glass of water in front of her and waved it neatly. Then, without even looking, she turned her head and walked out. Mr. Gua, who was drenched in water, was left sitting in his seat in a daze. There were many weirdos in the world. Zhang Yujie didn't expect to meet such a self-righteous weirdo at a blind date. Now that she thought about it, poplar fruit was still the best. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 535. That's how it is. Don't you think he's despicable? Zhang Yujie pouted as she spoke into the phone. There weren't many people that could make Zhang Yujie act like a spoiled child, and poplar fruit was the only one. However, poplar fruit did not buy it and smiled. All right, you've already poured water on his face, so what else do you want? Zhang Yujie raised her voice as she pouted. Hey, whose side are you on? Do you know? Watering him is already letting him off easy. If it was when I was young, I would have let him know why peach blossoms are so red. Haha, you're talking as if you're old when you were young. Poplar fruit smiled. Chatting with Zhang Yujie, poplar fruit felt more relaxed and couldn't help raising the corner of his lips. I'm old. Zhang Yujie laid on the bed as she gestured with her left hand towards the incandescent lamp as if she was trying to grab onto something, but it slipped through her fingers. She sighed and said with a little self-pity, I'm being urged to get married by my family every day, and the ruthlessness of time has formed a cocoon in my ears. Poplar fruit smiled. You're so literary, and you're a poet now? Then again, poplar fruit did not continue to bully her after teasing her. Instead, he eased up and said in a gentle voice, Look at you, you're getting more and more abnormal recently. No matter how great the pressure at work is, you still have to adjust yourself properly. Furthermore, don't work overtime every day. Work can't be done overnight, and how can you ruin your body? When poplar fruit chatted with women that he was familiar with, his tone would be gentle. It wasn't because of any charm, but because of poplar fruit's character. Since young, his mother was stronger than his father, which also determined poplar fruit's respect and concern for women. So subconsciously, his voice was gentle and magnetic when he chatted with Zhang Yujie. I'm slowly recovering. Zhang Yujie's breathing quickened. She smiled sweetly and said, Now, there are many things that can be handed over to the subordinates. I don't need to follow them anymore. So, I'm starting to relax a little. That's great. Poplar fruit said with a smile, Don't think about that man anymore. Isn't it just a failed blind date? Why do you care so much? I don't care about him. Zhang Yujie exclaimed, "Aya," and said in dissatisfaction, "He's just a passerby. Who cares about him? Besides, who said I was on a blind date? I was just trying to appease my mother, okay? I just didn't expect to meet such a strange man. His idea is really strange. We haven't confirmed the relationship, and it's only the first time we've met. He wants you to quit your job and be his full-time wife. This man is too arrogant." Poplar Fruit shook his head. He felt that the word arrogant was a bit of a stretch. Actually, what he said is not wrong. Many of the big families in the capital are in the same situation as what he said. Zhang Yujie hesitated for a moment and said, "It's very difficult for a woman to achieve anything in politics. In the big families, they are reduced to accessories. This is normal. Before he came, he didn't inquire about my background. It's not hard to understand what he said." "Why do you say that?" Poplar Fruit frowned. He changed into a stern voice for the first time. He said fiercely, "What era is it now? Do you still need to give up everything to help a man? Men and women are equal. Why can men freely do their own things, but you women can't have your own dreams and career? If that's the case, then what's the meaning of your life?" Poplar Fruit's tone revealed deep disappointment. He said, "Without dreams, you can only become someone else's puppet." Zhang Yujie was silent for a moment. Then, she suddenly burst out laughing. "What are you laughing at?" Poplar Fruit said with dissatisfaction, "I'm talking to you about serious matters." "I'm laughing at your stupidity." Zhang Yujie was not afraid at all. She laughed and scolded, "You're so stupid. Can't you tell that I'm just stating a fact? Can't you tell that I'm also very disgusted? You even threw a tantrum at me." Poplar Fruit awkwardly scratched his head. He held it in for a while before saying, "I'm thinking about which rich young master you will marry in the future. After marriage, you will either be foolishly at home taking care of the children or talking about perfume and cosmetics with a bunch of rich women. You won't have a job, you won't have your own career, and you won't have the freedom you said you wanted. Just thinking about it makes me angry." Poplar Fruit was very honest. What he said was his true feelings. It's just that he himself didn't understand the real reason why he was angry. "How can I marry someone else?" Zhang Yujie was silent. After a long time, she said faintly, "If it weren't for my mother forcing me to go on blind dates, I wouldn't be willing to meet some rich young master." Poplar Fruit's ears automatically filtered "someone else" into "some other rich young master." He heard the hidden bitterness in Zhang Yujie's words, but he didn't hear who Zhang Yujie was expressing her feelings for. After hearing Zhang Yujie's words, Poplar Fruit was in a good mood and laughed. "Who can force you to do something you don't like?" "My mother." Zhang Yujie exhaled and said, "I'm so angry because of her. Not only did Deng Baoyan pester her from time to time and force her to go on blind dates, but after meeting Mr. Gua today, Zhang Yujie complained to her, and Deng Baoyan even laughed at her misfortune. After meeting someone bad, Zhang Yujie wouldn't stubbornly refuse to listen to her advice anymore, right? Deng Baoyan felt that this was a brilliant move, and it completely met her expectations. Poplar Fruit thought of the unreasonable rich lady he met at the hotel room entrance that day. He shook his head and said with a smile, "No matter what other people say, you have to have your own persistence." For some reason, Poplar Fruit thought of the scene of Lu Yunran putting on a wedding dress and marrying that clumsy fatty. He also thought of the scene of himself in the heavy rain waiting for Fong Beibei's forgiveness. His heart was filled with many emotions. After sorting out his thoughts, Poplar Fruit said slowly, "After all, marriage is a major event in one's life, just like one's dreams and career. Don't be influenced by other people's thoughts. You should bravely pursue your own love. Everyone says that romance novels are lies, but if we let go of love and let it disappear, how much regret will we have in this life?" Poplar Fruit could say this to anyone, but he should never say it to Zhang Yujie. After saying it, Poplar Fruit realized it himself. Bravely pursue your own love. He smiled bitterly in silence. Zhang Yujie had already confessed her feelings for him. Wasn't he encouraging her to continue pursuing him by saying this? But there was already someone in his heart. Poplar Fruit didn't want to see Fong Beibei leave so sadly and resolutely like Lu Yunran. Poplar Fruit's lips moved, but he didn't say anything regretful. Actually, he wasn't wrong. From a friend's point of view, Poplar Fruit really hoped that Zhang Yujie could find her own love, and not let her free and easy character be obliterated by a political marriage in a big family. Zhang Yujie also fell silent. Her EQ was much higher than Poplar Fruit's, so she naturally understood Poplar Fruit's intentions. She also understood that even though Poplar Fruit said this, the girl he loved in his heart wasn't her. But was this important? Zhang Yujie bit her lower lip, her eyes showing determination. However, the words that came out of her mouth were very teasing, which swept away the ambiguous and awkward atmosphere. Pfft, I'm just complaining to you. Do I need you to analyze my views on love? Are you addicted to being a teacher? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 536. However, the words that came out of her mouth were very teasing, which swept away the ambiguous and awkward atmosphere. Pfft, I'm just complaining to you. Do I need you to analyze the concept of love for me? Are you addicted to being a teacher? Poplar Fruit stared blankly, shook his head, and didn't go into that dead end again. He laughed heartily. Only a teacher can analyze it for you? This is the advice of your best friend. Tisk, it's up to you whether you want to listen or not. Come on. What advice? You say it as if you have a lot of experience. Who doesn't know that you're an old virgin, cough man who has been in a relationship for 4 to 5 years? Zhang Yujie's face didn't blush, and her heart didn't skip a beat when she said those words. Poplar Fruit didn't show any weakness, and he also sharply retorted, How good are you? You've lived for more than 20 years, and you haven't been in a relationship, right? Even kissing is so unfamiliar. Yongwu didn't forget the scene when Zhang Yujie forcefully kissed him and only knew how to kiss his lips. However, after saying those words, Poplar Fruit regretted it a little. He really touched the pot that didn't boil. Every time he thought about that experience, his face would turn red, and his heart would beat faster. Saying those words, didn't he pull the atmosphere back into the ambiguous atmosphere? Who said I haven't had a boyfriend? Zhang Yujie said unconvinced, I had a boyfriend when I was in elementary school, junior high school, and even when I was studying abroad, okay? The boys who pursued me could form a reinforced company. Do you think no one wants me? It's just. Zhang Yujie hesitated for a moment, gritted her teeth, and straightened her neck. It's just that I'm very conservative, and didn't let those bastards succeed. Poplar Fruit laughed, and Zhang Yujie on the other side of the phone was a little unhappy. Zhang Yujie sat up from the bed, turned on the phone, and shouted angrily, Hey, what are you laughing at? You're still laughing that I'm going to beat you up. Zhang Yujie picked up the soft down pillow and slammed it fiercely, as if the phone was the despicable Poplar Fruit. She completely ignored the fact that her silk nightgown had been torn open due to her actions, revealing a large area of her proud white chest. Haha, okay, I won't laugh. Poplar Fruit finally held back his laughter and said, I didn't mean to laugh at you, but being conservative is a good thing. You can't let those brats take advantage of you. Leave everything good for your true love. Yeah. Zhang Yujie crossed her legs and lay on the feather pillow. Unexpectedly, she didn't say anything. She just murmured, as if she agreed with him and was acting like a spoiled child. Do you have any plans to come to Beijing after the conference? Zhang Yujie asked cautiously. Come to Beijing? Poplar Fruit asked doubtfully, Is there anything important that I need to go there? Zhang Yujie was silent for a while, and then said in a low voice, No, I'm just asking. She changed into a relaxed tone and said, Why? Do you only want to come over if there is something important? You don't even want to see your friends? That's not what I mean. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, Recently, my schedule has been very tight. After school starts next month, I guess I have to fly to France. You know, I have to help Artul do a few shows. Before that, after the conference, I have to go to Guishan province and send the 4 members of the Xiong family back. Poplar Fruit briefly introduced the situation of Xiong Ji Wu's family to Zhang Yujie, and then said, "The last time I went there, I saw their mountain village. It was very remote, and they had to travel a long way. Especially the children who stayed behind. They are so pitiful. Going to school is a big problem. After the old teacher passed away this year, they will probably be free again. I want to see if I can find a better solution." Zhang Yujie frowned and said, "The country is helpless. What are you worried about? Of course, I know you have a good heart, but this problem is not something that you can solve alone." "Why do you say that?" Poplar Fruit said unhappily, "We can't say that the country is helpless. We can't just ignore it. Someone has to stand up and do something for them. Otherwise, it will be a vicious cycle from generation to generation. The gap between urban and rural areas and the gap between education resources will become bigger and bigger. Will they still have hope to survive?" "Don't yell at me," Zhang Yujie said discontentedly. "I'm just telling you about the current situation. You have money and can help 1 or 2 people to go to the city to study, but there are so many poor children in the world. Can you take care of them all?" Poplar Fruit knew that she was doing it for his own good, but there were some things that Poplar Fruit still insisted on. "I know I can't take care of them all, but I want to find a solution for them. I will do my best to help as much as I can. Maybe 10, maybe dozens, but no matter how many, I will have a clear conscience if I do it." Poplar Fruit didn't want to explain too much, nor did he want to use the story of the little boy who saved the stranded fish on the beach to show that others didn't care, but those children did. He only wanted to have a clear conscience. "I see." Zhang Yujie was stunned for a long time. She bit her lower lip with her pearly white teeth and said, "Poplar Fruit, you are such a good person." She added silently in her heart, "I love such a good person." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Does this count as giving me the good person card again?" He tried to change the topic to improve the atmosphere between the two of them. Zhang Yujie didn't actually treat their previous disagreement as a quarrel. Everything she said was for Poplar Fruit's good, including what she said next. "Do you need me to help you with anything? Maybe we can try to get volunteers to do volunteer teaching. What do you think?" "It's useless." Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, "I've asked some university principals in Chongqing. They are close to the water, but they are not willing to help. It's mainly because Guishan province is barren. The students are unwilling to go, and the school can't guarantee their safety." "Then do you have any ideas?" Zhang Yujie asked curiously. "I do have one. After a few days, I've come up with a new solution, but the conditions don't seem to allow it. We lack some necessary equipment." Poplar Fruit briefly described his idea. "Can't we just buy a computer?" Zhang Yujie asked curiously. "Computers aren't expensive now. You can buy one for 3,000 to 4,000. It's not just a small matter for a few people. If it works, it will benefit all the children in the mountainous areas. We have to be as frugal as possible." Poplar Fruit said, "It's best to have equipment like the Little Tyrant learning machine. It can be used as a computer when connected to the display. It's cheap, portable, and doesn't have to be outstanding. It just has to meet the needs of learning." "So, you have the ambition to save the world?" Zhang Yujie giggled. Without waiting for Poplar Fruit to refute, she smiled and said, "Okay, I'll stop teasing you. Tomorrow, I'll go to Zhongguancun to take a look. There are all kinds of strange electronic equipment there. Maybe there'll be something you need. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to." Chapter 537. Arguing with Zhang Yujie on the phone was a common thing. Poplar Fruit's personality was a bit serious, and Zhang Yujie was also a domineering queen, so there was more or less a conflict. However, the two of them didn't take these arguments to heart. They were good friends, and even a bit like more friends than lovers. After arguing, they returned to normal. However, today was different. After putting down the phone, Poplar Fruit fell into deep thought. What puzzled him was not the quarrel between the two of them, but Zhang Yujie's attitude after she asked him if he had time to go to the capital. Although Zhang Yujie hid it very well, Poplar Fruit could still feel her depression when he said that he didn't want to go to Beijing. She wasn't like this before. Poplar Fruit touched his unshaven chin and thought doubtfully. In the past, Zhang Yujie had asked this question many times over the phone, but she didn't have the same emotions as today. Did I miss something? Poplar Fruit frowned and said to himself. With his super memory, he started to search for the answer. This efficiency was not low. After a while, Poplar Fruit found the cause of the matter. Poplar Fruit's mouth curved slightly, and he muttered, "So it's like this, it's almost her birthday." August 19th, which was 10 days later, was Zhang Yujie's lunar birthday. Although Poplar Fruit remembered it before, he didn't think about it before, so he didn't think about it. No wonder you're unhappy. Poplar Fruit smiled and shook his head. Just say it's your birthday. Why hide it? I can't go to Beijing, but I can still send you a gift. Express delivery is so convenient now. Of course, only Poplar Fruit, who lacked EQ, would think this way. He didn't take the initiative, and he blamed the girl for not reminding him. He took out his phone and was about to call to comfort Zhang Yujie's hurt little heart. However, after the screen lit up, Poplar Fruit put the phone away. He revealed a playful smile and thought to himself, hee, it's better not to reveal it in advance. When the gift is sent, it'll be more interesting. I'm the dividing line. In the next few days, Poplar Fruit went to lectures and seminars, and he took the 3 children to some of the iconic attractions in Zhongqing. Buying a computer and an iPad was the right choice. Because of these 2 things, when Poplar Fruit wasn't in the guest house, the 3 children could obediently stay in the room with Zhu Jingjing. Xiong Xiaofeng and Xiong Xiaolin had different interests. Xiong Xiaofeng loved to play. After buying the iPad, he almost always held it in his arms. He played with the apps obsessively. Not only the games, but other apps like Google Maps and Magic Camera also attracted him for a long time. Xiong Xiaolin, on the other hand, liked Poplar Fruit's new computer. Although she would shyly return the computer to Poplar Fruit when he came back, she usually stayed in front of the computer with Kiki in the guest house. Poplar Fruit downloaded the original American cartoon, SpongeBob SquarePants, for the 2 of them. He hoped that it would help Xiong Xiaolin learn English, practice her oral English, and teach with fun. In the end, as he expected, Kiki and Xiong Xiaolin both liked this optimistic and lively SpongeBob SquarePants. Under Xiong Xiaolin's lead, Kiki also started to talk along with the cartoon. Of course, Xiong Xiaolin's English foundation was poor, and Kiki only knew some simple words. Most of the time, they could not keep up with SpongeBob SquarePants' speaking speed. However, Xiong Xiaolin worked hard to learn. She was a big sister who was older than Kiki. It would be really embarrassing if she was beaten by Kiki. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei had been in contact. Poplar Fruit found that after he took the initiative, the call between them became longer and longer. There were even situations where the 2 of them could chat happily for a long time without Kiki. Thinking back to the past, when the 2 of them were not so close, Kiki would always monopolize the phone with Fong Beibei. Even when Kiki did not know how to speak, she could whisper to Fong Beibei for a long time. Now, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei could talk more and more. Was this a big improvement? No matter how stupid Poplar Fruit was, he could feel that the relationship between the 2 of them had improved by leaps and bounds. His mind could not stay still, and he wanted to leave his body and fly to Fong Beibei's side. However, Poplar Fruit knew that even if the 2 of them could meet now, with Fong Beibei's thoughts, she would definitely not allow herself to be with him. Fong Beibei could be said to be a complex of contradictions. Like other My Daughter born in the 1990s, she liked 2-dimensional manga, just like how she always called Poplar Fruit uncle. In her heart, there was a lively, naive, and playful My Daughter. However, she was different from those 2-dimensional My Daughter. She was as traditional as the women in the old society. She was very kind, but also very conservative and stubborn. Previously, in the rain, she said that they would be apart for 2 months to let each other calm down. These 2 months were actually just a number in front of other couples. As early as Poplar Fruit had figured out his feelings, the gap between the two of them had gradually disappeared. Just like the content of the conversation between Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei Bei on the phone and the tone of each other, the two of them were infinitely close to being real lovers. Was there any meaning in holding on for 2 more months? But Fong Bei Bei felt that there was. In her opinion, a promise was as heavy as Mount Tai. Since she had made a promise, she should stick to it. Perhaps this was the difference in thinking between a straight-A student and an ordinary person. In this world, probably only Poplar Fruit, who was also a straight-A student, could endure it. Poplar Fruit was in a good mood now. He did not want to force Fong Bei Bei. Although his thoughts were like a tide that could not be calmed, he did not want to argue over a day and night of obsession. After having Kiki, he cared more about a lasting love. This love was a matter of a lifetime. What was the harm in waiting a little longer? Speaking of which, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei Bei's personalities were somewhat different from ordinary people. If you only looked at Fong Bei Bei's appearance, you would think that she was very witty and strange. But after interacting with her for a long time, you would find that she was kind and conservative inside. She was an out-and-out, antique type of beauty. Poplar Fruit was even more interesting. He was obviously a handsome guy, but he was very low-key. He did not care about his appearance and did not pay attention to his appearance. He was obviously very capable and could do a lot of things that would attract people's attention, but he threw himself into an obscure industry that was difficult to become famous. He had attracted a lot of beautiful women around him, but he was still like a big block of wood and remained single until now. If you were to say that Fong Bei Bei was conservative, Poplar Fruit was not any better. In his view, if you loved someone, you had to be wholehearted. Ever since Fong Bei Bei replaced Lu Yunran and entered his heart, no one could shake Fong Bei Bei's position in his heart. Duan Xueqing, whom he had known for 5 years, could not. Zhang Yujie, who had taken the initiative to attack, could not either. It seemed that Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei Bei were really a perfect match. This chapter can be considered as an answer to a book friend's question about Fong Bei Bei not being suitable to be the female lead. Of course, there will be more changes and developments in the future. If you don't read the end, how will you know the ending? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 538. The seminar was only 5 days long and it passed in the blink of an eye. Thinking back on the past few days, Poplar Fruit suddenly realized that he had grown a lot. In the beginning, it was his teacher, Chan Zongdai, who brought him to meet some seniors in the translation field. Later, after he went on stage and gave a report, it seemed that more people were willing to meet Poplar Fruit. Although Poplar Fruit was not satisfied with his report and felt that he was nothing compared to the speeches of the knowledgeable seniors he listened to the next day, his theory did not gain everyone's approval. Many scholars were still stubbornly opposed to Poplar Fruit. However, this did not prevent the professors from leaving a good impression on Poplar Fruit. After all, in such an impetuous and materialistic society, it was rare for a young man in his early 20s to have the patience to study linguistics seriously, not to mention that he was so talented. Among them, the most special was Professor Wang Bang, the Dean of the School of Oriental Studies at Beijing University. Originally, this seminar had nothing to do with him. However, since one day, Professor Gu, who was also a top professor at Beijing University and the director of the Institute of World Literature, suddenly came to him to ask some questions about Sanskrit translation, Poplar Fruit's name took root in his mind. Since the death of Master Ji, the research of Sanskrit had become even more lacking. Basically, Professor Wang Bang had heard of people who were good at Sanskrit. However, Poplar Fruit was an unfamiliar name. Therefore, out of curiosity, Professor Wang Bang took a day and specially came to Chongqing to meet Poplar Fruit. After talking with Poplar Fruit, Wang Bang developed a great interest in Poplar Fruit. He did not care about Chan Zongdai's dark expression and directly asked to poach Poplar Fruit. Of course, Poplar Fruit would not agree. His master was Chan Zongdai, and he was born and raised in Guangdong Province. Since he had chosen to continue his studies at Higashiyama University, he would not leave halfway. Wang Bangren was very straightforward. Even though he couldn't poach Su Tao, he wasn't angry. He said seriously, "I'm very sorry that you're not coming to Beijing University because Beijing University is a top-notch university in the country and the world. Our resources and strength are beyond your imagination. However, it doesn't matter. Scholars are divided by school and region, but there is no definite boundary for knowledge. As long as you are still interested in Oriental studies and Sanskrit, I welcome you to come to me at any time, or to Capital University for an exchange." Sanskrit is an ancient language. Although it has declined now, its breadth and profoundness are not inferior to our Chinese language. Our country has invested too little energy into its research. After Master Ji, we no longer have any top talents in this field. Wang Bang said frankly, "You are very talented. Study hard. No matter which school you go to, as long as you learn well and have a breakthrough in your research, it will be good news for our Sanskrit community." Wang Bang was not the first to extend an olive branch to Poplar Fruit, nor would he be the last. However, after Poplar Fruit rejected Wang Bang, Chan Zongdai was finally relieved. When facing Beijing International Studies University, Chan Zongdai still had a little confidence. However, Capital University was a behemoth that Higashiyama University could not shake. Not to mention Poplar Fruit, if Capital University offered him good conditions, even Chan Zongdai himself would be tempted. Poplar Fruit rejected Capital University, so the other schools naturally would not join in the fun. "I regret bringing you to the seminar," Chen Zongdai complained as he shook his head. "Look at you now. You have become the meat of Tripitaka. Everyone wants to snatch you away." Chen Zongdai did not really regret it, but anyone would be unhappy if their student was poached in front of others. "Ha ha, teacher, don't worry. You will always be my teacher. Moreover, during the interview, you gave me the task of expanding the territory. Why would I run away at the last minute?" Poplar Fruit smiled as he comforted Chan Zongdai. Chan Zongdai looked at Poplar Fruit in a daze. It was as if he had returned to half a year ago. At that time, the young man in front of him was still a little immature and lacked confidence. Now, he had become someone who could tempt even Capital University. Chen Zongdai did not know why, but he sighed in his heart. In fact, at that time, Chan Zongdai told Poplar Fruit to teach Poplar Fruit and even start a new language department. That was just Chen Zongdai's own fantasy. He even regretted it after he said it. He was afraid that he would put too much pressure on Poplar Fruit. However, from the looks of it, this freakishly talented guy seemed to be progressing step by step towards the blueprint that Chan Zongdai had drawn for him. He was used to learning things and knew 13 foreign languages. Master Ji only knew 12 languages, right? Could Poplar Fruit really be able to lead the foreign languages school and even Higashiyama University to glory as he imagined? This future was too beautiful. Chen Zongdai did not dare to imagine it. The road had to be taken one step at a time. He could not push Poplar Fruit to the position that everyone looked up to. However, since Poplar Fruit really had such strength, what was wrong with helping him soar as soon as possible? Compared to Capital University's strong intervention, Qiu Shan and Professor Luo were much more reserved. Qiu Shan maintained his status and did not involve Luo Lin and Poplar Fruit's discussion topics. Moreover, Qiu Shan believed that Poplar Fruit was a talent that could be molded. However, Capital University was also filled with talented people. It was not like the earth would stop moving without Poplar Fruit. Therefore, he suggested to Luo Lin that they should focus on communication and there was no need to play any tricks. In this way, Chan Zongdai's pressure was greatly reduced. He was also relieved to let Poplar Fruit mingle with Professor Luo Lin and the others. "I've asked around. Right now, there are many people who oppose you. The ones leading them are those old farts from Shanghai." Luo Lin did not act like a senior professor as he put his arm around Poplar Fruit's shoulder and laughed. At this time, it was almost time to leave. Out of gratitude, Poplar Fruit sent the professors from Capital University to the airport. How many scholars can not be opposed? Poplar Fruit laughed indifferently. Bruno, who insisted on the heliocentric theory, was burned to death. It's not that extreme. Luo Lin shook his head and laughed. Don't worry. With your professor and us supporting you, you don't have to worry about their criticism. Thank you very much. Poplar Fruit gratefully bowed to Luo Lin. If you really want to thank us, then come visit our Capital University of Foreign Studies more often. Let's exchange ideas and progress together. Luo Lin said with a smile. Previously, Dean Chi suggested to your dean to arrange a student exchange program between our two universities next year. We are looking forward to your exchange. Poplar Fruit said seriously, if there is such an opportunity, then Poplar Fruit will definitely cherish it. Since he did not know Chen Zongdai's thoughts, Poplar Fruit did not say anything definite. After all, it was only an exchange. Just as Luo Lin said, knowledge can only be improved through communication. If you keep your knowledge to yourself, then you will only stay in the same place. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 539. Yi Nuzhang recovered very quickly. She was already discharged from the hospital before Poplar Fruit's seminar ended. It was not hard to understand. Yi Nuzhang, Xiong Xiaolin, and Xiong Xiaofeng lived in the mountains all year round. Their bodies were much stronger than the people in the city. Although her illness had dragged on for too long and she was exhausted, after the treatment in the hospital and the supplements Poplar Fruit brought with him every time he visited her, her body naturally recovered. After she returned to the guest house, the two children were the happiest. Xiong Xiaofeng finally put down the iPad that he loved so much. He stayed in his mother's arms all day long, making Kiki envious. Poplar Fruit touched the head of the little girl who looked lonely with guilt. He rubbed his chin against Kiki. Kiki had always been loved by her father after she was born. However, Poplar Fruit was a man and could not be as sensitive as a woman. He could be both a father and a mother, but he could never give Kiki the motherly love that she longed for. Kiki opened her big watery eyes. She did not cry, but she felt a little wronged. The father and daughter did not speak, but they looked at each other and communicated their feelings silently. Little fool, you still have your father. Poplar Fruit looked at his daughter affectionately, conveying confidence and warmth to her who was a little helpless. Kiki's eyes gradually changed from longing and resentment to hesitation. In the end, she struggled slightly. She stretched out her little arms and hooked them around her father's neck. Her soft hair rested on her father's collarbone. She was no longer stubborn. She just closed her eyes and cherished the warmth that she had with her father. The road back to the Hmong village from Chongqing was not as crowded as before. Poplar Fruit took the 4 members of the Xiong family to the capital of Guishan province by train. Poplar Fruit thought that it would be troublesome to walk on the mountain roads. He sent most of the luggage that was difficult to carry home first. He only left 1 suitcase, which was mostly Kiki's daily necessities. This is Kiki's car. When they arrived at the provincial insurance company, Kiki immediately saw the Land Rover parked at the entrance. She jumped up happily and ran to the front of the car. She pointed at the Land Rover and looked up with a proud smile. Goldie followed him. It sniffed the newly repaired Land Rover and even lifted its hind leg near the rear tire to pee in satisfaction. Poplar Fruit laughed and pushed it away with a kick, saying, "Get out of my way. How dare you?" Poplar Fruit. Xiong Jiwu walked over with his wife, whose movement was a little inconvenient. He looked at Poplar Fruit with a guilty face, mumbling something but not knowing what to say. Yi Nuzhang was in a good state of mind. She was even better at dealing with people than Xiong Jiwu. When she saw Xiong Jiwu's clumsy appearance, she directly apologized for him. Seeing the Land Rover, Xiong Jiwu's mood was very complicated. It was he who set the trap and destroyed the car. He also put Poplar Fruit and Kiki in danger. Then Poplar Fruit didn't hold him responsible. Instead, he reached out to help him. However, from another point of view, if this car accident hadn't happened, Xiong Jiwu would have been doomed to take the risk. Not only would Yi Nuzhang not be able to get medical treatment, but he might also end up in a bad situation. The cause and effect of this world was very complicated. If he could go back to the past, Xiong Jiwoo would probably still throw the stone down. It could only be said that he was very lucky to have met Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit smiled, patted Xiong Jiwoo on the shoulder, and said to Yi Nuzang with a smile, "Sister-in-law, you don't need to say anything more. Brother Xiong has a good heart. We don't need to hold on to it. Let bygones be bygones. Kiki wants to sit in the front." Poplar Fruit opened the 4 doors to ventilate the inside. At this time, Kiki followed behind her father, pulled Poplar Fruit's trousers, and said with an expectant look. It seemed that the little girl had a good mentality. She didn't have a psychological shadow because of the previous car accident at all. Poplar Fruit smiled and picked her up. He asked knowingly, "Why does Kiki want to sit in the front?" "There's a big glass in front." Kiki cutely gestured in front of her father with her little paws and giggled. "Kiki wants to see a lot of scenery. Come on, give me 5. Poplar Fruit looked at Kiki's chubby little hand and was very tempted. He stretched out his left palm and patted Kiki gently, then laughed. The Land Rover's performance after the repair was still very strong, which had something to do with its engine not being damaged. Of course, if the engine was damaged, Poplar Fruit wouldn't be able to get the car back so quickly. Kiki sat in the front passenger seat, and the 4 members of the Xiong family sat in the second row. The second row had 4 people sitting in it. The Land Rover's cabin was spacious, and 2 of the 4 people were children, so it didn't seem particularly crowded. With the Land Rover, it was much more convenient for Poplar Fruit and the others. They directly bought a lot of snacks and books for the children of Hmong village in the provincial capital and put them in the trunk. As for how to bring them back to the mountain, Poplar Fruit wasn't too worried. As long as he called, the Hmong people on the mountain would come down to help. "Do you need to buy anything else?" "New clothes." Poplar Fruit laughed. "No, we really don't need anything," Xiong Jiwoo said embarrassedly. Previously, in Chung City, Poplar Fruit had already bought a lot of new clothes for the 2 children. Of course, he also bought a few for them, and they were still wearing them. Today they bought so many things, all of which were paid for by Poplar Fruit. Xiong Jiwoo didn't want to let Poplar Fruit spend more money. Since they didn't need to buy anything else, Poplar Fruit drove them home. However, even though the Land Rover was fast, it was already dark when Poplar Fruit drove from the provincial capital to the city where the Hmong village was located. They couldn't climb the mountain and go back to the Hmong village in the middle of the night, right? Poplar Fruit suggested that they stay in the county for a night. Why don't Xiong, Xiaolin, and Xiaofeng stay at my brother's house? We can squeeze in there. Yi Nuzang hesitated, then said, "Stay in a hotel? It's so expensive." Poplar Fruit didn't think it was expensive to stay in an express hotel, which only cost 200 yuan a night. However, in the eyes of Yi Nuzang, who was a spendthrift, 200 yuan was the cost of a week's worth of food for the whole family. Yonghua looked at them and smiled, but said without any explanation, "It's not like I don't know about your brother's situation. Before we came, Brother Xiong already said that their family of 3 squeezed into a small room. If the 4 of you squeezed in, where would you find space to walk? Okay, listen to me, we'll stay in a hotel." This was what Poplar Fruit had talked about with Xiong Jiwoo when they were chatting on the mountain. Originally, after Xiong Xiaolin was admitted to a key junior high school in the county, they wanted to let Xiong Xiaolin stay at her uncle's house. Although the conditions weren't that good, they could save a lot of money. By the way, Poplar Fruit turned to Xiong Xiaolin and smiled. "Do you know where your teacher's house is? Let's pay him a visit tonight. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to." Chapter 540. The poverty in the mountains seemed to have little impact on the small county. Just like other small towns, there were also bustling streets. Even if the lights were hung high and old motorcycles were running on the narrow streets, young people who had nowhere to vent their energy were calling their friends and wandering around the various nightstands. In the night, a behemoth-like white SUV slowly drove out of the neon halo, turned into a small intersection, and finally stopped on the side of the road. The back door opened first, and Xiong Xiaofeng jumped down skillfully. He was still shouting, I know how to drive. I mean, be gentle. Don't break Uncle Yang's car. Xiong Xiaolin also got out of the car and said, what if you break it with so much strength? Gulu gulu, Xiong Xiaofeng made a face at Xiong Xiaolin and muttered, you're so annoying, you're not my mother. Poplar Fruit came down from the driver's seat with Kiki in his arms and a big bag of fruit in his other hand. Because Yi Nuzhang needed to rest early, only Poplar Fruit brought the two children. Xiong Jiwu was persuaded by Poplar Fruit to stay in the hotel to look after his wife. Yes, Teacher Meng used to live in this building. Xiong Xiaolin pointed to the store on the left and said with certainty, he used to take us here to play. I've never been here, Xiong Xiaofeng said loudly. Who told you not to study hard? Only the top 5 students can come here. Xiong Xiaolin said while twisting Xiong Xiaofeng's ear. Although the words, top 5, sounded scary, in fact, it was not difficult at all. There were not many children in the mountains, and there were not necessarily more than 10 children in a grade. Ouch ouch. It hurts. Xiong Xiaofeng struggled and shouted in Miao language. Poplar Fruit smiled and patted Xiong Xiaofeng's head and said, go back and study hard. If your grades are good, Uncle Yang will take you out to play. How can I study without a teacher? Uncle will help you carry it. Xiong Xiaofeng hugged the big bag of fruit and lifted it up with all his might. Since Xiong Xiaofeng wanted to cultivate Poplar Fruit, he didn't refuse. He just used a little more strength to lift the bag so that Xiong Xiaofeng could relax a little. He smiled and said, don't worry, there will always be books to read. What does your teacher's family do? Walking to the courtyard behind the store, Poplar Fruit looked around and asked curiously, looks like they're quite rich. Xiong Xiaolin shook her head in confusion. When she came to play in the past, she was too envious to notice these things. However, Poplar Fruit felt that the late teacher Meng's family was indeed very rich. The storefront was 6 stories high. Even if it was a small, remote county, it was not something that an ordinary person could afford. It would cost at least 1.8 million yuan. After pressing the doorbell and waiting for a while, someone came to open the door. It was a middle-aged man with a crew cut and wearing striped shorts. He looked at Poplar Fruit and a few children beside him, who looked very attractive even under the dim street lights. He asked curiously, who are you looking for? Sorry to disturb you at night. Is this Teacher Meng's house? Poplar Fruit asked. I have 2 children here. They were both Teacher Meng's students when he was alive. We want to visit his family. The middle-aged man's eyebrows suddenly rose. He opened his eyes wide and stared at Poplar Fruit. Then he looked down at Xiong Xiaolin and Xiong Xiaofeng who were standing timidly behind Poplar Fruit's legs. He looked carefully for a long time, trying hard to remember. After a long time, he said, this is Xiong Xiaolin, right? She used to come here with my late father. Hello, Uncle Meng. Xiong Xiaolin bowed shyly. The middle-aged man sighed deeply and shook his head. Then he opened the door and made room for them. He said, come in. Thank you. Poplar Fruit followed the 2 children in. Kiki put her arms around his neck and looked at the middle-aged man with some fear. She waited until no one was paying attention to her, then she secretly leaned against her father's ear and whispered, Papa, doesn't Uncle Meng like Kiki? It's so scary. Poplar Fruit smiled. He rubbed Kiki's little head and did not explain more. Poplar Fruit could clearly feel the hostility of the middle-aged man towards them. At first, Poplar Fruit thought that he was just guarding against strangers, but later, he felt that he also had an indescribable dislike for Xiong Xiaolin, which made Poplar Fruit very confused. Uncle Meng's family is in business? Poplar Fruit followed the middle-aged man up the stairs to the 4th floor. Because the 1st to 3rd floors were rented out as shops, the 4th to 6th floors were where they lived. Just looking at the decoration of the living room, it was already very good. It was not luxurious, but in this small county, it was considered first class. Call me Meng Ping, but I can't afford to be called uncle. They are still my father's students. My family is in business, but I still work for the government. The middle-aged man sat down on the sofa in the living room, waved his hand and pointed to the sofa, meaning to let Poplar Fruit and the others sit. "That won't do. You look about the same age as my father. How can you call him by his name?" Poplar Fruit pulled the children to sit down and said with a smile, "Moreover, I'm not Teacher Meng's student. Let's do our own thing." After they sat down, Xiong Xiaolin and Xiong Xiaofeng became very reserved. They placed their hands on their knees and did not dare to move. Chi-Chi, on the other hand, twisted her neck and looked at everything around her curiously. Hearing Poplar Fruit's words, Meng Ping carefully looked at Poplar Fruit, who was under the incandescent light. He raised his brows and felt that there was something different about Poplar Fruit. He asked curiously, "You don't look like a local. Xiong Xiaolin and the others, do you have relatives in other places?" Not only did he not look like a Miao, but he also didn't look like a person from Guishan province. Poplar Fruit's Mandarin was purer than most people, and it was difficult to hear his accent. Poplar Fruit smiled. "Uncle Meng has good eyesight. I'm indeed not a local, but I'm also not a relative of Xiaolin and the others. I came from Guangdong province." "You came from Guangdong province? How do you know the children from Miao village?" The doubt in Meng Ping's eyes deepened. He seemed to be talking to himself. That shouldn't be the case. It's so tiring to go up the mountain. Ordinary tourists can't go up the mountain. Looking at your age and appearance, you're still a student, right? Could it be that you're here to teach? Meng Ping's guesses were gradually getting closer to the truth. Poplar Fruit asked in surprise, "Uncle Meng, you can tell that I'm a student?" "No, I'm not here to teach. I just met these children by chance. I heard about Teacher Meng's touching story, so I wanted to come and visit." "I don't think so." Meng Ping sighed and ignored Poplar Fruit's words. He said to himself, "That kind of place, who would want to go, who would want to stay?" His deep sigh hid deep resentment and complicated emotions. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 541. To be able to teach in such a tough mountainous area for decades, there's probably no one else like Teacher Meng in the whole of China. Poplar Fruit sat up straight in awe and said, "After I heard Xiaolin talk about Teacher Meng, I've always wanted to visit you. You don't have to judge whether my father is great or not." Meng Ping was not happy when he heard this. Instead, he waved his hand impatiently and said, Chi-Chi was shocked by Meng Ping's reaction. She twisted her body and squeezed herself between her father and sister Xiaolin, hiding herself. Poplar Fruit was also stunned. He asked doubtfully, "Uncle Meng, did I say something wrong?" Meng Ping's face was full of displeasure. He said in a stiff tone, "I'm not talking about the country's righteousness. You also have parents and a family. Are you willing to see your family abandon their family and children and run to the mountains alone to be a civilian teacher? Do you know how I felt when I found out that my father had passed away in the mountains?" Poplar Fruit was silent. He felt a little sad and did not know what to say to comfort him. He could only listen to Meng Ping vent. "Everyone else thinks that your father died in the line of duty and died honorably. But who knows that he didn't die in the line of duty? After my father retired, his health was not good." Meng Ping grabbed a peanut from the coffee table and placed it on the glass as if he was playing chess. He said angrily, "Originally, after he was discharged from the hospital, we were happy to bring him home to enjoy his old age. Who knew?" Poplar Fruit had heard the story from Xiong Xiaolin before. But looking at it from a different perspective, it was a different story. Teacher Meng had been in the hospital for half a year. He was actually still worried about the children in the Hmong village. Not only did he often call the village chief to ask about the progress of the new teacher, he also kept urging Meng Ping to help. Speaking of this, Poplar Fruit learned that Meng Ping was a section chief in the county's education bureau. Of course, because of Teacher Meng, Meng Ping was promoted to the position of deputy director. Although he was the last one, he was still a small official. Finally, a teacher came. However, not long after Mr. Meng was discharged from the hospital, he learned that the teacher had left after staying on the mountain for less than 2 months. The children from the Miao village had neglected their studies for almost 2 years. How could Teacher Meng not be worried? Following that, Teacher Meng went up the mountain again. He had already retired. Even though he returned to his post, he did not receive any salary. However, Teacher Meng did not care. He only wanted to give his children a chance to study even at the cost of his old bones. I told my father. Meng Ping's eyes were a little red, but he still gritted his teeth and he said not to worry. I'll go back to the station and urge you. Don't go up the mountain. Stay at home and wait for the good news. However, Teacher Meng did not listen. He said, the children on the mountain can't afford to wait. After that, he went up the mountain and did not come down again. The leaders in the county and city gave my father a heavy as Mount Tai wreath. What **T? Meng Ping did not know if it was because he had been holding back his anger for too long, but he did not know what to say. Uncle Meng, Poplar Fruit said with a bitter smile, lower your voice. Lower your voice. Lower my voice? I'm just a small official. I was only promoted after my father died. If anyone doesn't like it, I'll just quit. Meng Ping's temper was unusually fiery. However, thinking about it, he did have the ability to do so. His family was in business and owned such a big property. In this small county, he was considered a wealthy family. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, Uncle Meng. Meng Ping interrupted Poplar Fruit and said angrily, I don't need you to persuade me. I understand the principle. However, you will never understand my feelings. How could he not understand? Looking at Meng Ping's anger, although it was not directed at him, Poplar Fruit still felt the same. If Teacher Meng did not go up the mountain without caring about his health and stayed at home with his son's family, his illness would not have relapsed easily. Even if there was a sudden situation, the hospital in the county was well equipped. Although he could understand Meng Ping's anger, Poplar Fruit still shook his head and said, Uncle Meng, I understand your feelings as a filial son. However, you should also understand Teacher Meng's choice. To him, the children on the mountain are as important as his life. Meng Ping instantly blew his beard and glared. He stood up and was about to fly into a rage. However, at this moment, Meng Ping saw Kiki, who came out from under Poplar Fruit's armpit. That delicate little face and that pair of innocent eyes forced him to swallow the swear words that were about to come out of his mouth. Meng Ping suppressed his anger and could only sit down and turn his head to the side. He said in a muffled voice, My father has retired. Poplar Fruit understood even if Meng Ping did not say anything unnecessary. After Teacher Meng retired, he could have just let go. However, there was no one to take over and he could not rest assured. He could only put on his uniform again. In the end, it was the system's fault. Poplar Fruit asked curiously, The conditions on the mountain are very tough. It is the reason why many teachers do not go up. I understand this point. However, as the saying goes, when there is a reward, there will be brave men. Why doesn't the county spend more money to invite teachers up the mountain? It would be fine even if they change the batch every 1 or 2 years. Who is willing to go? Meng Ping raised his eyes and looked at Yong Guo. He snorted and said, 10 years ago, the teachers on the mountain had a salary of $500 a month. 10 years have passed, and the price of goods has skyrocketed. The salary has increased by several times, but the salary has only increased to $800. Including all kinds of subsidies, the salary is less than $1,000. The 2 teachers in the Hmong village are still teachers. There is no money and no status. Who is willing to go? Even Teacher Meng, who had worked hard for decades, was only promoted when he was nearing retirement. It was all thanks to Meng Ping's connections in the Education Bureau. Poplar Fruit was shocked. A salary of less than 1,000 yuan a month? Even in Poplar Fruit's village, where they faced the earth and the sky, the average monthly salary was more than that. Did the county think of any other way? Poplar Fruit asked with a frown. 1,000 yuan is too little. It's not even 1,000 yuan. Meng Ping corrected. Think of any other way? Our county is a poor county. Every year, we rely on the Poverty Alleviation Fund to supplement our finances. Where would we find the spare money to increase the teacher's salary? Let's not talk about the mountain. The teachers in the county's key schools only have a salary of a little more than 2,000 yuan. Anyone with a bit of ability and potential would run to the city. Who would be willing to stay? Meng Ping shook his head and said dejectedly, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 542. Fortunately, when they left the Meng family, Poplar Fruit did not quarrel with Meng Ping, whose temper was like a barrel of gunpowder. Although Meng Ping's attitude towards Poplar Fruit was still a bit bad, it was not to the extent of kicking Poplar Fruit out. Through the communication with Meng Ping, who was half an insider, Poplar Fruit at least understood the situation of this small county. He also gave up the idea of asking for help from the government. Everything could only depend on himself. Poplar Fruit and the others went up the mountain early the next morning. The Land Rover was parked in the snack shop by the National Highway at the foot of the mountain. Generally speaking, in this kind of place where there were no villages or shops, it was easy to bump into a black shop. However, the owner of the shop was from the Hmong village. If they were to calculate the ancestral tree, they would be Xiong Jiwu's cousin. If it were other tourists, let alone casually parking, even if they just wanted to buy a bottle of water, it was estimated that the shop would raise the price. However, Poplar Fruit was different. When Xiong Jiwu's cousin heard that he had done a lot to help Yi Nuzang, he treated Poplar Fruit as one of his own. Moreover, because they had called the village committee early on, when Poplar Fruit and the others arrived at the foot of the mountain, there were already 4 Hmong men waiting in the snack shop. As mentioned before, the income of farming was not good now. Moreover, the mountains were high and the rivers were dangerous. It was difficult to transport the planted things. Therefore, most of the men of the Hmong village in the mountains went to the big cities to work. However, not all of them had left. There were some men who stayed and stubbornly guarded their own land. In the Hmong village where Xiong Jiwu was from, there were only 4 Hmong men under the age of 50 other than Xiong Jiwu. Although they were not tall or strong, they often shuttled through the mountains. Their lean muscles were not weak. When Poplar Fruit opened the trunk, they quietly surrounded him to help him move things. Poplar Fruit was getting into the car and handing out the box when he suddenly heard a vigorous voice. "You are the city boy that Xiaowu mentioned?" Xiong Jiwu looked up and found that it was the old man who had just sat in the deepest part of the snack shop. Even Xiong Jiwu's cousin was waiting for him respectfully. Poplar Fruit didn't notice it when he was sitting down. Now, he realized that although the old man's hair and beard were all white, his back was very straight and his movements were very vigorous and free. Especially his bright eyes, which often revealed a bright light. His every move gave people a feeling of being one with nature. However, because he didn't feel threatened, Poplar Fruit didn't think in that direction. He simply felt that the old man was in good health. Although he was much older than his father, his spirit was better than his father's. "Hello, my name is Poplar Fruit." Poplar Fruit hurriedly bowed respectfully and replied. Although Poplar Fruit was not born into a rich family, he had a good upbringing. The traditional virtue of respecting the old and loving the young had been rooted in his bones since he was young. "Poplar Fruit, this is our chief." When Xiong Jiwu saw him, he hurriedly limped over and helped to introduce him. "Nowadays, people don't call me chief anymore. They all call me village chief. My name is Xiong Kahu." The old man waved his hand and said, "You have a good heart. You helped Xiaowu and the children in the village buy so many books. I thank you on behalf of Xiong Family Village. It's my duty, it's my duty." Poplar Fruit hurriedly bowed and said, "The gratitude of an elder couldn't be accepted calmly. The necessary etiquette must be done in place." After listening to Xiong Kahu's words, Poplar Fruit suddenly found that Xiong Kahu spoke Mandarin very well. It was not as strange as Xiong Jiwu's accent. It was even similar to children like Xiong Xiaolin who had undergone systematic learning. This was a very interesting discovery. However, Poplar Fruit didn't care about it. With the help of the 4 strong men, Poplar Fruit was much more relaxed. He only carried a backpack with a computer on his back, then carried Kiki in one hand and Gold, who didn't dare to cross the suspension bridge, in the other. Kiki had just woken up and she was a little hungry. However, after crossing the suspension bridge, they still had to walk for more than half an hour on the mountain road. Poplar Fruit was embarrassed to ask everyone to stop halfway and wait for him to help Kiki wash up and make milk powder for her. He could only wrong Kiki to endure. Kiki curiously looked at Xiong Kahu. This old man's white beard looked more interesting than Chen Zongdai's, but Kiki didn't dare to do anything to Xiong Kahu's grandfather like she did to Chen Zongdai's grandfather. Xiong Kahu was serious in speech and manner. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle in the sky, making Kiki a little afraid. In fact, Kiki's sixth sense was very accurate. Xiong Kahu was indeed very scary. Other than Poplar Fruit, who was fearless of anything, the people in Hmong village, including the adults and children, were very respectful to Xiong Kahu. On one hand, this respect was based on the authority of the chieftain, and on the other hand, it was based on his strength. This will be described in detail later. Unlike the sudden visit a few days ago, Poplar Fruit was treated like a panda when he came again today. News of him had already spread throughout the entire Hmong village. Before he entered the village, he was surrounded by 3 layers of people. The inner layer was made up of children who came to join in the fun, while the outer layer was made up of curious Hmong women who came to look at the rich man. Perhaps it was because they saw that Poplar Fruit had a family to feed. Sighs of pity sounded one after another. Poplar Fruit, who had learned a lot of Hmong pronunciation from Xiong Xiaolin, vaguely heard them talking about him. It seemed like their hopes of introducing the unmarried daughters of their 3rd aunt and 4th aunt to him were dashed. Seeing that Poplar Fruit was surrounded and could not move, Xiong Kahu spoke from the side. All right. It's fine as long as you've seen him. Go do what you're supposed to do. What's there to see? Xiong Kahu spoke in Hmong, so Poplar Fruit did not quite understand. However, Poplar Fruit could hear the authority in his tone. As soon as his voice fell, the Miao women hurriedly held, hugged, and scattered with their children. The entrance of the village, which had been noisy like thousands of birds just now, was emptied in less than a minute. Where do we move these things? A Hmong man wiped the sweat on his forehead and asked while picking up 2 boxes. These 3 boxes are books, and these 2 are biscuits and candies. They're all for the children in the village, Xiong Jiwu explained to Poplar Fruit because Poplar Fruit could not understand Hmong. Then move them all to the school. Put the books on the bookshelf later. I'll write a record later and record down who wants to read the books. As for the food, call the children over to share it later. Xiong Kahu waved his hand and sent the 4 Hmong men to work. As for Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jiwu's luggage and other things, there were naturally people who helped to send them to Xiong Jiwu's tower. Chieftain, have some tea. Xiong Jiwu asked Yi Nuzang to pack up the things. He quickly boiled water and made tea for Xiong Kahu, who was sitting on the chair in the hall. Poplar Fruit was busy washing Kiki's face and rinsing her mouth. When the water boiled, he also made some milk powder for her. As for Gold, it had dog food to eat, so it would not go hungry. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 543. Xiong Kahu sat there and observed Poplar Fruit for a long time. He felt that the more he looked at Poplar Fruit, the more he felt that Poplar Fruit was not an ordinary person. There was no need to talk about his attire. The average city dweller would not be able to reach Poplar Fruit's economic standard. However, under his faint aura, Poplar Fruit did not react at all. After all, the name Xiong Kahu was a Han Chinese name that Xiong Kahu had given to himself when he was an adult. The story behind it was just like the name itself. Xiong Kahu was someone who had killed a tiger. Child, why did you think of helping little Five? Did you know each other before? Xiong Kahu did not like to be courteous, so he asked directly. Xiong Jiwu did not explain Poplar Fruit's background in detail. He was completely honest with Yi Nuzang, but in front of Xiong Kahu, the great patriarch, Xiong Jiwu still did not dare to tell him everything. He was afraid that Xiong-Kahu would punish him according to the clan rules. This also made Xiong-Kahu puzzled, because it was impossible for an outstanding person like Poplar Fruit to be related to Xiong-Jiwoo. Hearing Xiong-Kahu's interrogation question, Poplar Fruit, who was holding Kiki, was stunned for a moment. However, he did not mind. He smiled and said, "I didn't know him before, but I met him by chance a few days ago. I heard him talk about family matters, and when I heard that Xiaolin wanted to give up her hard-earned future to leave the money for her mother's treatment, I felt very touched and decided to help." "Is that so?" Xiong-Kahu glared. This expression was not angry, but it was imposing, and it unknowingly increased the pressure on Poplar Fruit. However, Poplar Fruit did not notice it. Only Kiki almost choked. Poplar Fruit was busy wiping the milk foam that had spilled out of her mouth. At this time, Xiong-Kahu finally realized that his reaction was a little too intense. He quickly restrained himself. It was fine to test Poplar Fruit, but it was not good to scare the child. Although Xiong-Kahu did it on purpose, he really did not know about this matter. Xiong-Jiwoo, who had just brewed a new pot of tea, was stopped by him. "Little Five, come here and tell me what is going on. Your family is in trouble. Why didn't you come to me? Everyone in the stockade is a family. Your wife needs money to treat her illness, and your child needs money to study. Everyone has the ability to help you, but you did not say a word. Are you not treating us as your family?" Xiong-Kahu asked angrily, especially Xiaolin. "I've watched her study for almost 10 years, and she finally got into a good school. I'm so happy that I'm about to beat the drums and gongs. How can she quit school just like that?" After he understood the patriarch's question, he smiled and said, I did not deliberately hide it. As you know, no one in the stockade has much money on hand. We'll spend tens of thousands of yuan at a time. How would I dare to ask them for money? Then you should have come to me." Xiong-Kahu glared and said angrily, "I can't give you tens of thousands, but I can still get some from my comrades outside." Xiong-Kahu and Xiong-Jiwoo quarreled like this for a while. Kiki had already drunk her breakfast and was pulled out to play by the excited Xiong Xiaofeng. Poplar Fruit saw that Xiong Xiaolin was following them. He hesitated for a moment and did not stop her. With Xiong Xiaolin, a sensible big sister, helping to take care of Kiki, nothing should happen to her. Xiong-Kahu, who had always been calm in the face of a landslide, finally became worried when he talked about the education of the children in the mountain with Xiong-Kahu. This was a big problem. Although it was summer vacation and school had not started yet, the school in the stockade still had to face the dilemma of not having a teacher. Xiong-Kahu was actually very anxious, but this was not something that could be solved by being anxious. If others were not willing to be your teacher, you couldn't just tie them up and go up the mountain, right? It was not the old era anymore. Of course, although he was very enthusiastic about the discussion with Poplar Fruit, Xiong-Kahu was also a sensible person. Based on Poplar Fruit's situation, it was basically impossible for him to be willing to stay on the mountain for the sake of the children like Teacher Meng did in the past. Therefore, Xiong-Kahu did not make this request, lest both parties become embarrassed because of this request. At noon, Xiong-Kahu went to the school to host the distribution of biscuits and candies. These things were not very expensive for Poplar Fruit, but for the children of the Hmong stockade village, it was a big surprise. They scrambled to squeeze into a group. If it were not for Xiong-Kahu's joking scolding, these children would have overturned the table. "Quick! Line up! If you don't listen, you won't get a share later." When Xiong-Kahu spoke to the children in the stockade village, his poker face became much more benevolent. However, even so, the prestige that he had accumulated over the years still scared the children into lining up obediently. After every child received the biscuits and candies, under Xiong-Kahu's instructions, they would say, "Thank you," or "Thank you," to Poplar Fruit. The children of the Hmong stockade village were very sensible. Even if they could not take their eyes off the beautiful sandwiched biscuits and were about to drool, they still obediently thanked Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit actually did not care about these things, but Xiong-Kahu had asked him to do this so that the children would know how to be grateful. Poplar Fruit seemed to have noticed something in the crowd. He strode over and pulled out a little girl from the group of children. Hee 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 hee. Kiki screamed and laughed. She wiggled her little butt and wanted to run away, but she was caught by her father. The little girl had somehow sneaked in. Her light pink dress was particularly eye-catching among the black and blue linen clothes of the Hmong stockade village children. However, because she was too small, Poplar Fruit did not notice her before. The surrounding Hmong women covered their mouths and laughed. They did not care about Poplar Fruit at all and started discussing, "This child is really good-looking. Her father is also handsome. It's a pity that my eldest daughter would have a chance if she was born a few years ago. Don't even think about it. He's so rich. Can you match up to him? Why not? Wang Jian is so poor. Mei Fu still fell in love with him, didn't he?" A poignant love story in the Hmong people, similar to Romeo and Juliet. In the face of love, what's there to match up to? They did not avoid Poplar Fruit because they were all chatting in Hmong. Poplar Fruit could not understand at all. Of course, even if Poplar Fruit could understand, he would not care. Continue. Poplar Fruit waved at Xiong Kahu. Because of the little girl, Kiki, the biscuits and candies were interrupted for a while, but the little girl did not support it. She was so happy that she giggled and wanted to break free from her father and run out. After messing around for the whole afternoon, only Xiong Kahu and the others stayed to clean up the mess. The biscuits and candies were just a small gift. Xiong Kahu valued the books brought by Poplar Fruit the most. Most of them were encyclopedic knowledge suitable for children. For the children in the mountains, these were enlightening books. Xiong Kahu did not want to be careless at all. Later, Poplar Fruit received enthusiastic invitations from many Hmong women. They all wanted to invite Poplar Fruit to their homes for dinner. However, Xiong Jiwu had already prepared lunch, so Poplar Fruit politely rejected them all. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 544. You're not doing this to please me, are you? In the evening, Poplar Fruit was sitting on a bamboo chair in the Hmong village's high-rise building. He was chatting with Fong Bei Bei with his feet up. Suddenly, Fong Bei Bei said something that almost scared Poplar Fruit to the ground. "What are you talking about?" Poplar Fruit pretended to be angry and said, "What do you mean by please you? Are you the only one who can do good deeds, but I can't do the same?" In fact, Poplar Fruit was a little guilty. Fong Bei Bei was right. Poplar Fruit had made up his mind to help the Xiong sisters and even the children in Hmong village. In fact, Fong Bei Bei had played a big role in it. Poplar Fruit knew that Fong Bei Bei was a very kind girl. She was more frugal when it came to spending money, but she was not stingy when it came to doing good deeds. This could be seen from her persistence in helping out at the stray dog rescue station for several years. Liking someone would often reflect a kind of homoeroticism. Although Poplar Fruit did not like to do good deeds, he began to pay attention to his own behavior in this regard. He wanted to try his best to get Fong Bei Bei to approve of him. Of course, Fong Bei Bei was only a trigger. What made Poplar Fruit really determined to do this was his inner driving force. Solving the current situation of insufficient educational resources for children in the mountainous areas was a big problem. Whether it was Poplar Fruit's own teacher, Chan Zongdai, or the professors from other universities that Poplar Fruit talked to during the seminar, they all thought that Poplar Fruit was delusional. This was a problem that the country was having a headache over. How could Yang Guo be able to solve it alone? Even Zhang Yujie advised Poplar Fruit to give up the idea. It seemed that in the whole world, only Fong Bei Bei, who did not understand the situation, insisted on supporting Poplar Fruit. Along the way, Poplar Fruit had encountered setbacks. It seemed that every way that he could think of was blocked. This aroused Poplar Fruit's fighting spirit. Is it really not possible? I don't believe it. Poplar Fruit was determined to do this thing well. It was not purely to donate money or books, but to completely solve the problem of the difficult education for children in the mountainous areas. Recently, Yang Guo had a clear idea. However, Whether this idea could be realized or not, it was still missing a key link, so there was no need to talk about it here. Uncle, I just said that. Why are you angry? Fong Beibei's clear voice came from the other side of the phone. With a little arrogance, she said, I'm not blaming you. Actually, I'm quite happy. Poplar Fruit was not really angry. He smiled and said, I'm lying. I'm not angry. So, you went back to the Hmong village today? Fong Beibei asked curiously. You're going to climb that very high suspension bridge again? Yes. Poplar Fruit replied. I want to try it too. Fong Beibei's tone was very envious. She said, I've never seen the mountains you mentioned. When I traveled, I went to the big cities. You'll have a chance in the future. I'll take you there later. Poplar Fruit comforted her. By the way, I saw that the clothes of the Hmong people here are very nice. The embroidery of flowers and birds looks better than the clothes in the branded stores. Do you want me to bring you some? Okay. Well, bring one. Try it on. Fong Beibei said happily, but she immediately changed her tone. Humph, uncle, be honest. Did you stare at the beautiful Hmong girls today? No. I promise not. And they're all aunties. Why would I stare at them? Poplar Fruit denied. You can't find another girl as beautiful as Fong Beibei in the whole world. You're the only one in my mind. I don't have the energy to look at others. You're such a smooth talker. I don't believe you. Fong Beibei spat at him. She covered her mouth and giggled. Hearing Fong Beibei's laughter, the image of a young and beautiful girl trembling with laughter appeared in front of Yongguo's eyes. Yongguo couldn't help but feel her heart sway. Poplar Fruit did not realize that he seemed to have become the uncle that Fong Beibei always talked about. This was not only a change in mentality after having children. Poplar Fruit's own aesthetic standards seemed to have changed too. He liked girls younger than him more and more. He wanted to spoil Fong Beibei like he spoiled Kiki. It could not be said that this view of love was wrong. However, from another point of view, his relationship with Fong Beibei seemed to be more and more like Uncle Reynolds and little lowly Natalie in Lion, the Professional. Uncle, let me tell you something. Fong Beibei laughed and began to speak to Poplar Fruit in a gloomy tone. You must be careful. Be careful of what? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. I heard that the Miao women can cast a love spell. Fong Beibei threatened. You must not show mercy everywhere. If any Miao woman secretly casts a spell on you and you betray her, the spell in your stomach will eat your internal organs. Then bite and bite, plop, plop, it will come out. It was originally a very scary thing, but when it was said by Fong Beibei, why did it become very cute in Poplar Fruit's ears? Especially the plop, that she deliberately lowered her voice. Poplar Fruit wanted to laugh when he heard it. No way. Poplar Fruit pretended to mutter to himself. So scary? Just now, a few Miao women came and wanted to introduce unmarried girls to me. So, I don't go out tonight? It was true that a few women came, mainly because they wanted to see Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit was so tall that he was like a crane in a flock of chickens in the Miao village. Wherever he went, he would attract the attention of the Miao people. Introducing girls to Poplar Fruit was made up by Poplar Fruit himself. The Miao people valued loyalty in love very much. Naturally, they would not consider a man like Poplar Fruit who already had a child. You really want to? Fong Beibei did not manage to tease Poplar Fruit. Instead, she was deceived by Poplar Fruit. She suddenly raised her voice and said very discontentedly, So, you were thinking of seducing the innocent Miao women. Humph, strange uncle, I misjudged you. Poplar Fruit was sweating. It was just a joke. He did not want to get himself into trouble. He quickly apologized and explained. After coaxing for a long time, Fong Beibei finally let him go. The phone conversation went on for more than an hour. In the end, Poplar Fruit's phone and ears were hot. However, they were all having fun. Focus on your work. Don't think too much, okay? Fong Bei Bei finally said like a nagging big sister. The two of them seemed to have switched roles. Do a good job. When you come back, I'll give you a big reward. What reward? Poplar Fruit was excited. Hee, I'm not telling you. It depends on your performance. Fong Bei Bei did not wait for Poplar Fruit to ask and hung up the phone with a smile. Xiao Han is coming home today. I also wish everyone can come home safely. Please vote and recommend me. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 545. The next morning, Poplar Fruit woke up early and greeted Xiong Jiwu, who also woke up early. Then, they walked to the mountain behind the village. Yesterday, under the guidance of Xiong Jiwu, Poplar Fruit visited the Xiong village. He was very envious of the mountain behind the village. When he woke up early this morning, he wanted to climb to the peak to have a look and practice his martial arts. The Miao village was already halfway up the mountain. Although there was no road at the back of the mountain, Poplar Fruit quickly climbed to the top of the mountain along the path made by the villagers. The mountain peak was not the highest in the group of mountains. At most, it could only be considered average, so it did not feel small. However, because of the shade provided by the trees, the steaming mist appeared dense under the refraction of the morning sun. Coupled with the pleasant chirping of the birds and the gurgling of the water in the mountain stream, it gave people a pleasant feeling of returning to their natural state. After finding a flat place, Poplar Fruit began to practice his Tai Chi. Poplar Fruit now knew a lot of Kung Fu. In addition to his basic Tai Chi, he also knew Xing Yi Quan, Ba Gua Quan, and 8 Steps Meteor Kick. However, he usually practiced Tai Chi the most. Although it was summer, the air on the mountain was still a little cold in the early morning. However, after Poplar Fruit practiced a few sets of Tai Chi, which combined speed and speed, white sweat began to steam from his head. When he practiced Tai Chi, it did not mean that his 6 senses were blocked. Poplar Fruit still heard the faint footsteps coming from the bushes. Who is it? Poplar Fruit was very curious, but he did not stop his Xing Yi Quan movements. He was just practicing Kung Fu to exercise his body. He was not doing anything shameful, so there was no need to stop. Poplar Fruit guessed that the person should be a Miao person from the Xiong village. When Poplar Fruit stood up, he saw Xiong Kahu walking out of the bushes from the corner of his eye. Xiong Kahu was probably no less than 70 years old. His hair and beard were all white, but his movements were still very vigorous. He was even more nimble than Poplar Fruit, who was a novice. He was wearing a navy blue jacket from the Miao tribe, and there were leggings on his legs that were often seen in Red Army movies. There were 2 long knives on his back, and he looked like he was going to fight. However, Xiong Kahu did not have any killing intent, so Poplar Fruit was not worried. He stopped what he was doing and respectfully bowed to Xiong Kahu. Good morning, Chief Xiong. You're practicing martial arts? Xiong Kahu didn't like to be polite. He waved his hand and asked curiously, No wonder, I felt that you weren't ordinary when I saw you yesterday. You really know Kung Fu? Scratching his head, Poplar Fruit shyly replied, I don't know any martial arts. I've only learned some mediocre martial arts. Sorry to embarrass myself. Haha, judging from your movements earlier, it doesn't seem to be some mediocre martial arts. Xiong Kahu laughed as he continued, I seem to have seen it before. Is it the Xingyi Fist? I had a comrade who knew it. Yes. Poplar Fruit smiled. Chief Xiong was a soldier in the past? Yes, I was in the 70s, and I even participated in the self-defense war. Xiong Kahu proudly said, The reconnaissance unit I was in back then was the strongest in the Southwest Army. They don't have that designation anymore, and I heard that they were all called the Special Forces. Poplar Fruit said in awe, Chief Xiong's Kung Fu must be very powerful. I have a friend who's also in the Special Forces. As far as I know, everyone there has their own unique skills. This old man's Kung Fu is ordinary. Otherwise, I would definitely show you. Xiong Kahu shook his head and said frankly, As for these 2 sabers, they were passed down from my ancestors. With just this bit of skill in wielding the sabers, I've cut down 99, if not 100, of the ingrates of the small countries in the south. Xiong Kahu was already being modest. Back then, their unit was worthy of the title of Gui Jian Chou. They would often sneak behind enemy lines and kill the enemy headquarters until they cried for their parents. Other than having good marksmanship, their kung fu wasn't bad. Kung fu was only average for experts. If it was an ordinary person, Xiong Kahu wouldn't be at a disadvantage against 5 or 6 people. What kind of treasured knife is this? It's still in good condition after so many battles? Poplar Fruit took the knife from Xiong Kahu. It was half the height of a person. He curiously opened the scabbard to take a look. It was shining with a cold light, as if the passage of time hadn't left a mark on it. Ha ha! Xiong Kahu laughed. How is that possible? After the war, it was damaged a few times. Of course, it was reforged. Oh. Poplar Fruit nodded. He then asked, "What's this knife called? Tang saber? Miao Dao?" Poplar Fruit didn't know much about cold weapons. In his mind, there was only the name of Tang saber that often appeared in novels. Miao Dao was something he made up. In fact, Poplar Fruit felt that this knife was a bit like the Japanese sword in the movies. "It's a Miao Dao." Xiong Kahu nodded and said. Poplar Fruit was surprised. He actually made up the right one. But this Miao is not a Miao from our Miao tribe. Xiong Kahu smiled indifferently. He could see that Poplar Fruit was confused, so he took the initiative to introduce it to Poplar Fruit. This is a two-handed long knife created by General Qi Jiguang during the Ming Dynasty, imitating the shape of the Japanese sword. It's called a Miao Dao because it looks like a miao. My ancestor was also a general in the Qi army, so these two knives were passed down. Xiong Kahu said, "Of course, only these two handles were passed down from my ancestors. After so many years, the body of the knife has been damaged and reforged. So, these two knives can be used at the same time?" Compared to history, Poplar Fruit was more interested in the Miao Dao's knife skills. The image of holding a Miao Dao with both hands and fighting against thousands of soldiers and horses flashed in his mind. It was so cool that he couldn't look straight at it. "Yes." Xiong Kahu nodded and said, "But the requirements for a two-handed knife are very high. The kids who learn from me now can't even practice to this level. It's good enough to be able to use one knife well." Poplar Fruit's interest was completely aroused. Usually, Poplar Fruit practiced martial arts with his fists and feet. But no matter how strong his fists and feet were, he couldn't beat cold weapons. This was the same principle that cold weapons couldn't beat hot weapons. Otherwise, what was the value of thousands of years of human technological development? Don't look at the movies where a fierce person often fought against dozens of gangs with watermelon knives and axes with his bare hands. That was just a movie. A few knives chopped over and sealed off all escape routes. Even a martial arts expert could only admit defeat. The human body was made of flesh. How could it withstand a sharp knife? Poplar Fruit looked at Xiong Kahu longingly and said, "Chief Xiong, is it convenient for me to see your two-handed knife?" Xiong Kahu laughed heartily and said, "What's inconvenient about it? It's just playing with the knife. Stand aside, this old man will show you how to play." Although he said that, Xiong Kahu wasn't so generous as to casually show his martial arts to outsiders. It was because Poplar Fruit was a benefactor to the Xiong clan. And through Xiong Kahu's observation, Poplar Fruit wasn't a person with ulterior motives. Therefore, Xiong Kahu let down his guard and was sincerely willing to show it to Poplar Fruit. Today is New Year's Eve. Xiao Han wishes everyone a Happy New Year. Chapter 546. Taking back the Miao Dao from Poplar Fruit, Xiong Kahu twirled the blade and stood with the blade in his right hand. Poplar Fruit saw this and quickly retreated. Although Xiong Kahu twirled the blade freely, he was still in his 70s after all. Who could guarantee that the blade would not fly out of his hand? Blades and spears had no eyes. It would be a tragedy if he was cut. The old man did not take out the second blade on his back. Instead, he stood with one blade in his hand. He stared ahead fiercely as if the tree in front of him was his enemy. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Poplar Fruit could only hear the rustling of leaves in the forest. The edge of his white shirt fluttered slightly. All of this was like the eve of a big battle in the movies. However, it was not that mysterious. The fluttering of the shirt was just caused by the wind in the forest. However, Yang Guo really felt like he was a small dinghy in the middle of a stormy sea. Xiong Kahu glared at him, and a surging murderous aura swept over him like a raging red flame. This murderous aura! Yang Guo wasn't unfamiliar with it at all. He had also felt it from his brothers in the special forces. He had even killed a few criminals before, so he had more or less touched the threshold of murderous intent. However, compared to old Master Xiong Kahu's murderous intent, it was really insignificant. Poplar Fruit could not help but admire him. To be able to emit such a strong murderous aura, how many enemies did he have to kill to accumulate it? Even if it was converted into military achievements, there were probably not many people like him in the army. However, why didn't Xiong Kahu continue to develop in the army but return to his hometown? This was somewhat thought-provoking. Watch carefully. Xiong Kahu let out a loud bellow, and the aura that had just spread out instantly condensed. It was as if it had transformed into the Miaodao in his hand. This. Poplar Fruit's pupils shrunk and there was a look of shock in his eyes. If it were anyone else, they might not have felt it as deeply as Poplar Fruit. The ability to sense chi was a unique skill of inner force experts. Of course, there were some people who were gifted, but Poplar Fruit was a combination of gifted and inner force. He could clearly sense the changes in the chi around him, so he naturally wouldn't miss Xiong Kahu's unseen but impressive action. It seemed that even Master Guo of the Xing Yi boxing school had not reached such a fine level of chi gene transformation. What's more, Poplar Fruit could sense that Xiong Kahu was not an inner force expert. The chi force he had manifested was a murderous aura that had been accumulated like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. This somewhat subverted Poplar Fruit's understanding. If the Miaodao was said to be sharp enough to cut through a strand of hair, then Xiong Kahu's entire being had turned into an unstoppable long blade. He stomped his right foot hard on the ground, and his entire person, no, it should be said that the entire bloody blade had been brandished. Slash, lift, flick, stab. The bright silver Miaodao flashed through the air with streaks of moonlight, and the air that was chopped into pieces let out a shrill sound. At this moment, Xiong Kahu's white hair did not seem to be a symbol of his age. It was hard to imagine that an old man in his 70s could be so vigorous. His movements were as light as a youngster's. The only thing lacking was, Poplar Fruit was unknowingly immersed in the world of martial arts. He began to use his own understanding of martial arts to verify the Miaodao blade technique in front of him. In the end, he found a clue. It seemed like Xiong Kahu was brandishing his blade a little too much. Xiong Kahu's movements were not considered fast because he had deliberately slowed down to let Poplar Fruit see more clearly. However, he did not expect Poplar Fruit to be so easily fooled. In any case, Poplar Fruit could be considered someone who had just barely squeezed into the ranks of grandmasters. Poplar Fruit's eyes began to show some confusion. From his understanding, martial arts could be divided into two types. One was practical, and the other was ornamental. For example, Taiji Fist, the popular moves on the market were more ornamental than practical, but as for the brandishing of the blade, it was really purely ornamental. It was easy to understand after thinking about it. Brandishing the blade was often used by masters in movies to show off, but it was completely useless when facing an enemy. Not only was it useless, it could even hurt oneself if one was not careful. If it was someone else brandishing the blade, it would be understandable. But Xiong Kahu, wasn't he a veteran? Logically speaking, he should pay more attention to practicality. Every move and style should be focused on killing the enemy, not on aesthetics. I'm getting old. After Xiong Kahu stopped brandishing the blade in his hand, his breathing became uneven, and he sighed slightly. Not at all. Chief Xiong is still vigorous despite your age. Poplar Fruit laughed. Xiong Kahu wiped the sweat on his forehead and looked at Poplar Fruit's expression with some confusion. Why did he not look surprised at all? This was not the state Xiong Kahu was looking for. What? Is this old man's 18 Miaodao forms not exciting enough? Xiong Kahu raised his eyebrows and asked with some dissatisfaction. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and waved his hand, saying, "No, Chief Xiong's blade technique is very exquisite." "Then why don't I see you feeling anything?" Xiong Kahu stabbed the Miaodao in his hand into the ground, then held the handle with both hands and asked doubtfully, "Could it be that this old man is really old?" "It's not like that." Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment, then said, "Chief Xiong, there are some things that I don't quite understand." "Just say what you don't understand. You're hemming and hawing like a man," Xiong Kahu said with a snort. "All right, I'll just say it. If there's anything wrong, please forgive me." Poplar Fruit cupped his fists and said apologetically, "Your blade technique doesn't seem to be ruthless enough. Many of the moves that could have killed the enemy were just brandishing the blade. I always felt that these brandishing techniques were too cumbersome. Was it not necessary?" Poplar Fruit's age was very deceiving. Xiong Kahu didn't expect Poplar Fruit's eyes to be so sharp that he could actually point out the mystery of his blade technique. Xiong Kahu's body shook, and he used the action of supporting himself on the handle to cover his slightly red face. He coughed dryly and said, "Ahem, you looked very carefully. The blade technique that I showed you before was taught to the children in the stockade by me. There weren't many beautiful brandishing techniques. Why would they be willing to learn such boring kung fu from me?" Poplar Fruit's words not only brought embarrassment to Xiong Kahu, but also ignited Xiong Kahu's stubbornness that refused to admit defeat. He stretched his body, straightened his face, and said seriously, "Since you brought it up, I'll show you a real Miaodao today." Xiong Kahu wasn't in a hurry to pull out the Miaodao on the ground. Instead, he reached his left hand behind his back and slowly pulled out the second Miaodao. Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. He was suddenly energized. Was he finally going to use the double-handed Miaodao? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 547. The way Xiong Kahu held the saber in his left hand was very different from before. His left thumb and thumb gripped the saber blade, his index finger and middle finger gripped the saber hilt, his ring finger and little finger held the guard, and the back of the saber was pressed against his forearm. With a gentle pull, the Miaodao that was stuck in the ground was also pulled out. His right hand was still the same as usual. His 5 fingers gripped the hilt, his thumb and forefinger were pressed against the guard, and the back of the saber was facing his thumb and forefinger. One person, 2 sabers, 2 ways of holding? Poplar Fruit was still in doubt when he saw Xiong Kahu's left backhand saber in front of his chest and his right forehand saber slightly forward. It looks like one is going to be the main attacker and the other the main defender? Before Poplar Fruit could figure it out, Xiong Kahu suddenly let out a strange cry and lunged forward. Kill! Like a monkey with sharp claws and blades. Yang Gua was in a daze. She actually had such an association. If Xiong Kahu's 18 Miaodao forms were said to be grand and majestic, showing off the elegance and dominance of saber techniques, then Xiong Kahu's 2-handed Miaodao was more like a cunning assassin. Xiong Kahu led the saber with his body, and the saber spun with him, advancing and retreating in a chain, attacking in a defensive manner, and attacking in a defensive manner. The Miaodao was very long, but Xiong Kahu nimbly wielded it like a dagger. Especially the backhand saber in his left hand, it appeared and disappeared like a ghost. Every time he moved and turned, it was impossible to predict whether it would suddenly come out from under his armpit and launch a surprise attack. It was impossible to guard against it. In addition to the strangeness of his saber technique, Poplar Fruit also noticed that Xiong Kahu's footwork was also very interesting. Although his footwork was not as varied as his punches and kicks, it still showed different characteristics. When his hind legs stepped on the ground, he could dig a hole in a thin piece of grass. When his front legs stepped out, his hind legs would quickly slide forward. When his feet landed, His heels touched the ground first. It was both light and steady. When he moved, his feet were as nimble as a rabbit. When he advanced, he would follow. When he followed, he would advance. When he advanced and retreated, he would advance and retreat in a chain. Poplar Fruit's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. He seemed to have seen Xiong-Kahu's series of steps before. Because it was a memory from a long time ago, and Poplar Fruit didn't have a photographic memory at that time, it was a bit blurry when he recalled it. It seemed to be an old movie in Hong Kong, and Pan Wawa also acted in it. However, Poplar Fruit really didn't remember the name of the movie and the name of the kung fu. When he watched that movie, Poplar Fruit was still young, so he didn't pay attention to these details. The mountain wind rose again, causing the trees on the mountain peak to sway. The withered leaves that had been washed away by the sun and time fluttered to the ground. Accompanied by Xiong-Kahu's killing intent and the cold gleam of his blade, it was as if the back of the mountain had turned into a killing field. Of course, this was just a coincidence. However, facing the falling leaves, Xiong-Kahu became more and more excited. He leaped forward and threw himself into the rain of leaves. His dual blades danced so quickly that even the gleam of the blades became one. Swoosh swoosh, the sound of the blades cutting through the leaves reverberated in his ears. Poplar Fruit realized that he couldn't see the trajectory of Xiong-Kahu's dual blades with his own eyes. All he could see were the flying leaves. The wind stopped and the sound stopped. Xiong-Kahu suddenly stopped. Only the sound of his heavy breathing could be heard, but his face was still as dark as ink. He seemed to be too immersed in the movie, imagining everything around him to be a bloody battlefield where he fought for his life. It took him a long time to recover his senses. Amazing! Poplar Fruit's eyes widened even before he reached Xiong-Kahu's side. Around Xiong-Kahu, in a 2-meter radius, there were broken limbs of fallen leaves. Not a single leaf was intact. On Xiong-Kahu's body, there wasn't a single leaf left. Was this the legendary water doesn't enter? It wasn't that exaggerated. There weren't many fallen leaves. Compared to the pervasive water, it was much simpler. However, as the fallen leaves floated in the air, their trajectory became very strange due to the buoyancy. To be able to cut them into pieces in a short 10 seconds was no easy feat. Amazing! Poplar Fruit's mouth was wide open. He clapped his hands and said in disbelief, "Chief Xiong, how did you do it?" Xiong-Kahu didn't answer him immediately. He hadn't even caught his breath yet. After all, time waits for no man. He was already in his 70s. Even though his body was still strong and healthy, his current physical fitness couldn't be compared to when he was young. In the past, he could fight enemies for an entire day with a blade and a spear, but now he was panting after a few minutes of dual blades. After a while, Xiong-Kahu stood up straight with the help of his Miaodao. He chuckled and said, "How is it? Do you want to learn?" Xiong-Kahu didn't answer Poplar Fruit's question directly. Instead, he threw out such a question. Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but nod and say, "I want to learn, of course I want to learn." After Poplar Fruit's Tai Chi internal strength and moves reached the large success stage, he became more and more interested in the martial arts of various sections. It was said that many martial arts complemented each other and could even be traced back to the same origin. Even if they didn't have a common origin, there were still similarities between the moves. This was also the reason why Poplar Fruit could quickly master Shingi Fist and Baguazhang. However, after coming into contact with other martial arts, Poplar Fruit found that his martial arts could take another step forward. This was because each martial arts had its own uniqueness. For example, Shingi Fist's intent, 8-step meteor kicks body movement. These were things that Poplar Fruit had never come into contact with or understood before. It was like finding a ray of light in the middle of a dark night. There would always be a new harvest with a new skill. However, Poplar Fruit couldn't just pick and learn all the martial arts in the world. His understanding of Shingi Fist's intent benefited from the Gua family dojo's generous guidance. His 8-step meteor kicks body movement was also given to him by Che and Juan out of gratitude. After that, Poplar Fruit couldn't come into contact with the true essence of other martial arts. Just like Bagwazang, he could only follow the moves that were publicly available on the internet. After all, not everyone would be so generous as to share the secrets of their own sect. Poplar Fruit had visited a few dojos in Yongcheng that were said to have some connections, but in the end, they all ran into a wall. Poplar Fruit watched Xiong Kahu play with the Miaodao with both hands. He was actually drooling in his heart, but he was too embarrassed to ask. But now, not only did Xiong Kahu not beat around the bush, he even took the initiative to ask if he wanted to learn. Poplar Fruit felt as if a gold ingot had fallen from the sky. His entire body was dizzy from the impact of joy. He was so excited that he was incoherent. Clan leader Xiong, no, Master Xiong, are you really willing to teach me? Poplar Fruit asked excitedly. Xiong Kahu was very satisfied with Poplar Fruit's reaction. It was worth it for him to risk his life to perform the 24 Miaodao techniques. He smiled mysteriously and said, "Of course, there's no problem with teaching you. However, you have to promise me one thing first. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk." Chapter 548. Seeing Poplar Fruit's excitement, Xiong Kahu lowered his head and smiled a little proudly. He was not a person who liked to smile, but when the corners of his mouth twitched, it gave people a very strange feeling. However, Poplar Fruit did not pay attention to it. He only heard Xiong Kahu say as if nothing had happened, "I can teach you, but you have to promise me one thing first." Poplar Fruit asked in confusion, "Chief Xiong, if there's anything you need me for, just tell me." "Okay. That's what I want." Xiong Kahu nodded with satisfaction and said, "I talked to Xiaowu yesterday. I heard that you're a university student and a teacher, right?" Poplar Fruit scratched his head embarrassedly and said, "I don't deserve to be called a teacher. I've only helped my teacher teach a few classes in school." Xiong Kahu was a little excited. He said, Yes, you're a teacher. You can even teach university students. Teaching the kids in our stockade definitely won't be a problem." Poplar Fruit heard some clues. He asked with a strange expression, "Chief Xiong, what do you mean? Is your condition for me to teach the kids?" His old face slightly red, Xiong Kahu unconsciously pulled out the Miaodao in his hand and inserted it back into the ground. He scratched his face embarrassedly and laughed dryly. "Haha, it's really easy to talk to a talented student. You can see it. I do mean this. I'll teach you the Miaodao, and then you'll help me teach the kids in the stockade." Xiong Kahu rubbed his hands. He looked at Poplar Fruit's expression and said with uncertainty, "You don't have to be like Teacher Meng. 5 years. How about 3 years? 2 years can be discussed." Poplar Fruit did not express his opinion. This made Xiong Kahu's expectant expression become more and more bitter. Poplar Fruit did not expect Xiong Kahu to use this as an exchange condition. He sighed slightly in his heart. In fact, he was not angry because of this. Instead, he sympathized with Xiong Kahu. If Poplar Fruit guessed correctly, this type of Miaodao was a secret of Xiong Kahu's family. Normally, even if someone brought in a mountain of gold and silver, Xiong Kahu would not easily teach this skill to outsiders. Not to mention outsiders, when Xiong Kahu imparted this skill to the children in the clan, he also had to test their character. After all, if this skill was taught to an immoral person, it would definitely cause a bloodbath in society. Xiong Kahu had no choice but to follow Poplar Fruit to come to the back of the mountain. He wanted to use his only skill that young people like to tempt Poplar Fruit to teach the kids to teach the kids. The only thing to him, the only way. He was the martial art that was the only martial art skill that was the only martial art that he was the only that was the only that he too, which was the young to teach to the kids to him to his. If it were Meng Sanhua, who was a martial arts fanatic, hearing Xiong Kahu's words, he would definitely agree without hesitation. However, Poplar Fruit was different. He liked martial arts, but was not obsessed with it. If there was a chance to learn it, it would be best. If there was no chance, he would not feel too regretful. After all, there were still many people and things in this world that he cared about. Poplar Fruit did not know what to say. He hesitated for a while before letting out a long sigh. He shook his head and said, "Chief Xiong, I'm sorry. I really can't agree to this." He saw Xiong Kahu's face darken. His originally rosy face now looked like it had aged a few years. Seeing him like this, Poplar Fruit could not bear to see him like this. He opened his mouth and explained, "Chief Xiong, it's not that I have a heart of stone. I also want to help the kids on the mountain and help them fulfill their dreams of studying. If possible, I don't even need you to teach me the Miaodao. I'll stay and be their teacher." But Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. "As you can see, I have a child now. Kiki is still so young. I can't always stay on the mountain with her. Besides, I have my own career. The next few years are very important to me. I really can't let go of everything and come to the mountain like Teacher Meng." "I understand what you mean." Xiong Kahu waved his hand dispiritedly. He pulled up the 2 Miaodao from the ground and crossed them in the scabbard on his back. His back was slightly hunched as he prepared to walk down the mountain. "Chief Xiong." Poplar Fruit stopped him and said seriously, "It's impossible to wait for the county's Department of Education to arrange a teacher for us. I visited Teacher Meng's son yesterday. He's now the deputy director of the county's Department of Education. According to what he said, it's very difficult for a teacher to be willing to come up the mountain." Xiong Kahu looked back at Poplar Fruit unhappily and asked, "What do you mean by telling me this?" Poplar Fruit waved his hand and said, "Chief Xiong, I'm not trying to provoke you. I just want to tell you that the path we want to take has been blocked. We have to find a way to try another way." "What other way can there be?" Xiong Kahu said angrily. "If you could think of something, why would you drag it on until today?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Chief Xiong, you don't say. I really have thought of a solution that might work." "What solution?" Xiong Kahu asked in disbelief. "The biggest problem with the education of the children in the mountain area is the lack of teachers. Because it's remote, backward, and inconvenient, the teachers are not willing to come here." Poplar Fruit smiled. "What if we can break through the geographical restrictions? If we can make it easier for the teachers to come into contact with our children, wouldn't the problem be solved?" "I don't understand what you're saying." Xiong Kahu shook his head and said, "You want the children to leave the mountain and study in the county? The children are too young. How can we let them go? Even if we can, we don't have that much money. Even if you donate money, it won't be enough." Xiong Kahu smiled bitterly and said, "There are hundreds of children in the mountain village. If they all go to the county to study, the annual expenses will be at least 4,000 to 5,000. Including everyone, it will be hundreds of thousands. With that much money, it will be enough to hire a teacher. Don't think about hiring a teacher at a high price." Poplar Fruit waved his hand and said, "I can afford it, but the leaders of your county will definitely not agree." This was not difficult to understand. First, it was a matter of face. The county could not hire a teacher, but if you spent a lot of money to solve the problem, wouldn't it show that they were incompetent? Where would the county government's face go? Even if the leaders of the county were noble and did not take this matter to heart, it would definitely break the salary balance in the county. If the teachers in the mountain could receive such a high salary, and the teachers in the county were still paid so little, they would definitely protest. The county's finances were not good, and they needed to support so many people. No matter how one looked at it, rashly increasing the salary of the teachers in the mountain would not work. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 549. This is for the good of the children. What right do they have to disagree? Xiong Kahu said angrily when he heard Poplar Fruit's words. Xiong Kahu had always been an impatient person. Moreover, he had lived deep in the mountains for many years and was not familiar with the ways of the world. Poplar Fruit's words seemed to have touched his reverse scale, and he was instantly enraged. Xiongkahu looked scary when he was angry. His bell-like eyes stared, and his murderous aura swept over. It was as if the surrounding temperature had dropped to freezing point. Even Poplar Fruit felt uncomfortable. His hands were clenched tightly, as if he was about to pull out a knife and kill his way to the county. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and said, "Chief Xiong, don't get too worked up." It was obvious that explaining to Xiongkahu would not work because Xiongkahu would not listen to any explanation. Therefore, Poplar Fruit skipped this step and said, "Chief Xiong, I have another solution." Xiongkahu calmed down and asked curiously, "What solution? Without a teacher, are we going to let the children learn by themselves?" "You can say yes, but you can also say no," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "What do you mean?" Xiongkahu was completely confused by Poplar Fruit's words. "Half a year ago, I saw a new way of education overseas." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Someone would record the public lectures in the famous universities in the United States with a video camera and put it on the internet for the netizens who wanted to learn to click on it and learn by themselves through video." "What's the internet? Are things from Foreign Devils good enough?" Xiongkahu frowned. He couldn't keep up with the times anymore. He couldn't understand what Yang Gua was talking about, such as cameras and internet. He also instinctively resisted the foreign things from the US. It's not that they are definitely good, but if we modify them, it might be good news for our children. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "If the children also have a computer, then we can give them online long-distance education. For example, the children are in the mountains, and we are in the county outside the mountains, or even further away." Poplar Fruit explained, "I can connect with the children through the camera and teach them remotely." The more Xiongkahu listened, the more confused he became. The generation gap between the two of them was too big. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to take out his phone, play a video for him, and then give him an example to explain. "Wait." Xiongkahu interrupted Poplar Fruit. He grabbed Poplar Fruit's wrist and squinted his eyes to look at Poplar Fruit's iPhone. He was shocked and asked loudly, "Isn't this a TV?" To Xiongkahu, the most advanced object he had ever seen was probably the color TV in the village that had been purchased more than 10 years ago. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Let me give you an example. You can also think of it as a more advanced television. Let the children learn by watching TV." Xiongkahu asked, puzzled. "But all they want to do is watch cartoons all day long. Can they learn by watching that?" "Hee, if we teach them, of course we don't let them watch cartoons." Poplar Fruit laughed heartily and said, "Actually, it's the same principle as teaching. They sit in front of a computer, yes, a more advanced TV. Then I teach them through the camera outside the city. The images they see on the TV are just like how Teacher Meng teaches the children, with a blackboard and a textbook." Xiongkahu still didn't quite understand, but he vaguely felt that this was a feasible method. "Of course, I may not be able to handle it alone." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "That's okay. When I go back to school, I can apply to the school to list this as a charity or voluntary activity. Then I can organize other students to take turns teaching the children." This is great." Xiongkahu rubbed his hands and said excitedly, "If the university students teach the children, then it's the children's fortune. Actually, after Poplar Fruit was repeatedly rejected in Great City, he had an idea. Since volunteer teaching was so difficult, he could try online long-distance education. Especially when he recalled the advanced education methods in the United States, Poplar Fruit's desire to use long-distance education to change the educational situation of the children in Meng Village became more and more urgent. Poplar Fruit had given it a lot of thought. The reason why the public lecture videos in the United States were so popular in China was because everyone was too eager to pursue high-quality education. Although the public lecture videos in the so-called famous schools in the United States were not necessarily better than the lectures of Chinese university professors, and they were also more down-to-earth. However, with the name of the famous school, people would always feel that it was much better. Back to the feasibility, the public lecture videos were effective because their target audience was those who already had a certain foundation in education. Moreover, their self-control was not a problem at all. They could completely satisfy their pursuit of improvement through self-study. As for the children in Mung village whom Poplar Fruit wanted to try long-distance education, they did not have the qualities of the target audience mentioned above. The children were young and had poor self-control. Even if there were teachers, many of the children could not bear to sit still and study. Could long-distance education be better than a teacher's? Poplar Fruit had been deeply worried about this problem before. It was also the deciding factor in whether he should try it or not. However, Poplar Fruit thought about it later. In fact, this problem was not a problem at all in the general situation where education resources were scarce. The most important thing now was to solve the problem of, does it exist? Then solve the problem of, does it exist? After that, Poplar Fruit went into a deeper level of thinking in his mind. The results after that made Poplar Fruit very excited. This type of long-distance education targeted the primary school curriculum. The primary school curriculum was relatively simple, and it was the beginning of enlightenment. It was unlike the middle school and high school curriculum. If there was no teacher by their side to teach them step by step, it would be difficult for the children to learn. The simple nature of the primary school curriculum gave the possibility of long-distance education. As long as the children were willing to learn and put in the effort to listen to the classes, it would be easier for them to accept it. Secondly, college students preferred to use PowerPoint in their classes, with pictures and text, and even interspersed with videos. This kind of education method was more novel and interesting than the boring traditional education method. Poplar Fruit believed that the children would learn more through online long-distance education than traditional education. I'm now in contact with a friend of mine in Beijing to see if we can buy suitable equipment. Poplar Fruit said simply, I'm thinking that in the last half of the summer vacation, we can set up this classroom so that the children will have books to read next semester. Looking for monthly votes. Looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 550. The online long-distance education that Poplar Fruit mentioned was just an idea after all. Although Poplar Fruit confidently said that it would not be a big problem to achieve this idea, things like computers and the internet were still too advanced for Xiong-Kahu. For a moment, he was still skeptical. However, Xiong-Kahu was also a straightforward person. He immediately promised to come every morning to teach Poplar Fruit the 2 Miaodao. This was also his specialty. Although he did not understand, he was good at judging people. Although he had not known Poplar Fruit for long, he could see that Poplar Fruit was a person with a pure heart. Since he had promised to do something, Poplar Fruit would naturally not lie to him. Since Poplar Fruit had given the children of the Mung village hope, why would Xiong-Kahu cherish it? These 2 blades are for you. Xiong-Kahu untied the 2 Miaodao strapped to his body and handed them to Poplar Fruit. Come to the mountain tomorrow at the same time. How can I accept this? Poplar Fruit was shocked. He said, Chief Xiong, Poplar Fruit is already very grateful that you can teach me how to use the blade. This blade is your family heirloom. I can't accept it. Xiong-Kahu smiled like an old fox. He said, just take it. It's not as valuable as you think. I told you before that it was passed down from my ancestors, but I didn't say that this is the only Miaodao passed down from my ancestors. It turned out that when the Xiong family's ancestor returned to his hometown in glory, he brought back more than 10 soldiers with him. There were also 500 Miaodao made of fine iron in the carriage. At that time, the big families had the habit of keeping private soldiers. Although many of these 500 blades had been worn down in the past few hundred years, there were still a few dozen left because the Xiong village later moved to the peaceful mountains to avoid the war. In addition, the forging process of the Miaodao was not complicated. In modern times, the craftsmen had figured it out and improved it. The 2 sabers that Xiong-Kahu had given to Poplar Fruit had actually been reforged many times. Even the hilts had been replaced with iron over 100 years ago. If there was anything worth remembering, it would be the battle results of these 2 sabers. Back then, Xiong-Kahu had relied on these 2 sabers to make a name for himself in the Southwest Territory. However, Xiong-Kahu did not care too much about this. In his mind, these two Meow sabers that had been reforged from the beginning to the end could not compare to the old ancient Meow sabers he kept at home. Those were the real family heirlooms. However, Poplar Fruit wouldn't accept it no matter what, so Xiong Kahu could only give up. He promised to bring him 2 new knives tomorrow. When they returned to the stronghold, it was already past 7 o'clock. All the women in the stronghold were busy boiling water and cooking rice. Many of them even asked Poplar Fruit to bring Kiki home for dinner. "Wake up! The sun is shining on your butt." Going upstairs to her room, Yangwa saw that Chi-Chi was still curled up in the quilt and sleeping soundly. The little girl seemed to regard the quilt that was still warm as her father. She hugged and leaned against it, but half of her buttocks poked out of the quilt, revealing half of her dark eye circles under her panda pants. "Oh!" After calling out a few times, Kiki opened her big, infatuated eyes, but her slender eyelashes covered half of her vision. She turned her little head and looked for her father for a long time. "Get up, your brother Xiaofeng is waiting for you to play." Poplar Fruit smiled and lowered his head, pinching Kiki's tender little nose. "Oh," Kiki called out delicately, then acted coquettishly and stretched out her 2 little arms. "Papa, hug." Poplar Fruit picked her up from the bed, then hurriedly pulled up the corner of her clothes that had been rolled up when she slept to cover her white little belly. He was not shy, but worried that Kiki would catch a cold. Woof, woof. Jean Z, whose whereabouts were unknown, suddenly rushed in from the door. Then, a few barefoot Meow children followed behind Xiong Xiaofeng, yelling and shouting as they chased after him. However, seeing Poplar Fruit standing there, the noisy shouting stopped abruptly. They all shrank their heads and looked at Poplar Fruit timidly. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Am I so scary?" The other children were shy and did not dare to answer. Only Xiong Xiaofeng shook her head and said, "Uncle Poplar Fruit is a very good person." However, it was obvious that these Meow children could not understand Mandarin, so Xiong Xiaofeng had to translate it again in Meow language. "Uncle Poplar Fruit, Gold stole it." Xiong Xiaofeng pointed at Gold, who was trying to hide behind Poplar Fruit with its tail between its legs. It turned out that Xiong Xiaofeng had taken the pork jerky that Poplar Fruit had bought to show off to her friends, and Gold, who had a sharp nose, had followed her. When Xiong Xiaofeng was not paying attention, it had secretly eaten most of the pork jerky in Xiong Xiaofeng's hand. No wonder the children had chased after them in anger. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "It's okay, Uncle will compensate you." After that, he took out 2 bags of pork jerky from the suitcase in the room and handed them over. These were originally bought as snacks, so Poplar Fruit did not care much about these. Kiki was watching the fun. She happily struggled out of her father's arms and wanted to play with brother Xiaofeng. Poplar Fruit could only hurriedly wash her up and let her drink a bottle of warm milk. Poplar Fruit was worried and told Xiong Xiaofeng, who was waiting by the side, "Xiaofeng, you are a big brother now. You have to take good care of your sister, okay? You can't go to dangerous places, and you can't let your sister eat anything. For example, this pork jerky, your sister can't eat it. She's still young and can't digest it." Xiong Xiaofeng nodded seriously, then pulled Kiki's little hand. A group of Meow children led Kiki outside while singing. Listening to his daughter's cheerful cries and laughter gradually fading away, Poplar Fruit's heart was always in a mess. Although he had told Xiong Xiaofeng, Poplar Fruit was still worried. Unlike Xiong Xiaolin, who was more mature, Xiong Xiaofeng was still a child less than 10 years old. Who knew if he would be so excited that he would forget to take care of Kiki? Poplar Fruit was very conflicted. He paced back and forth in the hall. His brain, which could usually multitask, was in a mess. He had no mood to think about anything else. Xiong Jiwu, who was boiling water and cooking next to him, was very puzzled. He thought that Poplar Fruit was hungry. Xiong Jiwu hurriedly added 2 more handfuls of dry wood to the stove. As a result, when he looked up, Poplar Fruit was nowhere to be seen. In the end, Poplar Fruit was still worried. In the end, he secretly followed. Although he did not appear in the sight of the children, Poplar Fruit still followed from a distance, silently watching them. As parents, no matter how capable their children were, as long as their children were not by their side, their hearts would always be worried. Poplar Fruit did not understand before, but after having Kiki, he gradually understood the responsibility of parents. Looking at his daughter's happy smile, Poplar Fruit also smiled slightly in the distance. Little fool, don't worry and have fun. Daddy will always stand behind you and be your guardian angel. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to asterisk. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.